There we go. All right. We are alive once again with. Here, let me actually pull this up here. There we go. With our Night of the Round Table. Good evening, indeed. It's good to be here, to make it here once again. Uh, as I titled the Go Live notification, what a long, strange trip it has been. We were actually just talking about what I'm looking for and what everyone likes in terms of organizational medium for world building in this particular instance, since this is kind of what this is all about tonight. World building. World of Cairne is my little brain baby that these lovely players have just completely helped vitalize and put life into and make into something really, really incredible. Cairne would not be Cairne without my players, and I say that without an ounce of ego or whatever, because it's the absolute truth. It has exploded into something living since I gave you guys kind of free reign to breathe life into the races and cultures and classes that you're playing. So as far as what I look for in an organizational medium, so far the problem I've run into is I haven't found anything that correlates with the way my thought processes go. I do like I at the end of it, I would like to be able to put all my information into something and have it turn out into something that looks like homebrewery, as far as the formatting with the fonting and the pictures and everything. It's not realistic because, as you've seen with the homebrewery or the original stuff, like all the artwork in it was just stuff I snagged off the internet for placeholder pieces, and I don't have time or money to hire an artist to do that much work, because that would be a daunting task for any artist. Yeah. Hmm. That's the realistic way to do it. Like, as much as I would love to say have Prim do all the art for the world of Cairn, like, unless I could pay Prim to do that, I wouldn't even think of it, because I'm a hack artist myself, and even with my lower talent skill, thinking of doing that much art gives me a mental hernia because it's just so much. Oh God. Hmm. Ironically, the sketchy kind of half finished style that ended up coming out of that, yeah, it was amazing, and it was probably just because, like you said, he was like, I gotta get this out quick. Hmm. Well, and me being an old salty dog, a grognard, whatever you want to call it. See, when I look at things like that, I think about the original like first edition D&D art, the black and white illustrated that they had. Oh yeah, and some of it, so much of it, and I don't say this in a negative at all, but so much of it looked like it was out of some high school D&D nerds like sketchbook. It was exactly. It almost definitely was. That's the funny thing. They 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 sorry, I have a special guest here. They really kind of captured that whole feel of the, I don't know, the grassroots. Oh, did you post it in Cairne there? Let me have a look here. Oh, I got a chupacabra. Oh yeah, yeah. This is a classic. I forget the artist's name. Um, yeah, David Trampier. He was actually one of my favorites. Go play. Go play. Yeah, it does, and it's, I don't know. There's just something about it for me that screams like this is D&D. Um, this is this is the spirit. I think that, and I know it's real popular right now to bring up, but this is the spirit I think that like Stranger Things captured with, that grassroots sitting in the basement, bunch of nerds playing D&D feel. Hmm. Oh yeah.
No, I mean toys. No, I mean
Hmm.
toys.
Yeah.
I want mini toys. So bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And this is the Weird Frontiers is really well in line with the old Deadlands setting, if I remember correctly, which I'm a big fan of. Yeah.
No.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Kind of like Bioshock. I mean, the decay of the style, the Art Deco style that you see in it. Yeah. Oh yeah. True. True. Yeah. I like that. Let's see if I can find. Yeah, I can see it. It's worth it. Yes, yes. So I do have a very drill down mental state in my head. So and like World Anvil, for instance, is a very um, drill down, outliney type thing, but the organization that they use, my brain just cannot wrap around. Like I want to start like Cairn, boom, and then flowchart down to these are the nations of Cairn, and then from each nation flowchart down to these are the regions, these are the main cities, so on and so forth, going all the way down. And as it goes, I'd like to have subsections that allow me to branch out and say these are the important incidents, people, history that have happened here, that type of thing, and then have a way to sort it at the end of the day by saying, let me look at all the history points, let me look at all the important characters, that type of thing. Does that make sense, or am I just talking out my? I, I haven't tried, to be honest. A Gantt chart, you said? I haven't tried. Hmm. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah. Well, see, that's kind of my problem. Every time I sit down with World Anvil, because I've gone into World Anvil a few times and tried. I'm actually trying one more time. I think my big problem is that it gets into too much minutia right off the bat. Yeah, we're referring to the world of Cairne, shoot. But yeah, it gets into too much of the minutia right off the bat. So like, I would sit down, I would say, okay, I would like to start with the Empire of the Becht, right? The Bechtelite Empire. Right off the bat, it's like, okay, what are the famous universities of the? And I'm like, whoa. Yeah, so there's just so much minutia right off the bat, and I know that if I just took the time, it would probably be an amazing system. And I know that there's some things behind the paywall there, which is fine. I don't mean that in a negative way, but there's some things behind the paywall there that would probably aid in organization a bit. But until I get comfortable with it enough to where I'm saying this is where I'm going to dump this enormous project, I don't want to start spending money either, which I know makes me sound like a cheapskate, but I am. it, Honestly, it's a little column A, little column B. If you've looked at the home brewery thing, that was written almost linear. Almost. And I say that in the sense of, I started off, I was like, here's my introduction. And then it was, here are the races of Cairne 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then here are the classes that I want to be available in Cairne. And, it's just very linear in that sense. And that worked okay. And I did come back and tweak and make changes. I think I'm getting an echo there. Oh, okay. You're good. You're good. I think so. Okay. It's all good. But yeah, the Kanka. So. I've never heard of that one, Ginkgo, but I'll take a look. So, I think the main thing, and yeah, you can bypass prompts, Shun, you can, but like I was saying, since I do kind of have a linear style when I start going, if it's not following my thought stream as far as like the drill down in my brain, I just get frustrated. And it's terrible. It's a horrible, horrible thing of a creative to be that way. But I really am. I'm horribly self-critical, and if I get frustrated too much, I will just throw my tools in the air and go play Overwatch or something. Could be. I will definitely take a look. I am curious about it. Yeah. Hey,
Oh.
I used a system called Scrivener briefly when I was first starting out.
Scrivener.
So it's not RPG specific. It's very broad, and it's position. It's you're supposed to write big chunks and then organize them relative to each other in hierarchies. So you might write a top level draft that is your 3 paragraph description of the Becht Empire. And you would start to slot stuff in underneath that. You would just give it a header and say, okay, here's the current ruler. And you write his bit. And then you go, here's some other NPCs. You write them each their own little section. And you can just manipulate them how you want. The nice thing about it is you make this kind of structure out of your individual mini documents or sections without having to change the hierarchy. So you can play around with an actual output document for other people to look at without having to fundamentally fuck with how you've got it organized in your notes.
Yeah. And that's great. And I think a lot of it is, like you said, like when I started homebrewing all those many ridiculously many years ago, for me, the best form of organization was a trapper keeper.
Yeah.
To be honest, it is probably still the ultimate form of organization for data, at least in a hard form data it is.
Yes.
But it's just so hard to get a good trapper keeper these days.
Yeah, it's gotten more of a struggle. And the other problem is keeping yourself working on paper for long stretches is it's really challenging. It is just a lot slower than composing on a computer.
Yeah, that's true.
I go back to it whenever I'm like hard stuck. Like if I've got a deadline coming up and I'm just completely screwed, I will sit down and I will work on paper until my brain starts to move again.
Yeah. And I think too, and this is a quirk of mine that goes back to my early childhood. Just to kind of give you some background, like I grew up in a very very tiny town up in Maine, and it was so small. It had grades 1 through 12 in one building.
Oh Lord.
It's a very very tiny little rural farm town up in the wilds of Maine. And so when I came out of those early elementary school years and got dumped into a suburban school, like the standard suburban school where it's all grades are separated and everything. I think I got dumped into 3rd grade and I had classes suddenly, like multiple classes that were huger, just huge groups of little kids. And they handed me a textbook and just kind of expected me to follow along with what everyone else had already learned that I didn't. So I'll never forget my first day. They handed me as a math book, and they said open to page such and such and do the problem. And this is their exact words, right? Do the problems as you see them. And it was, the little grid layout like they have in school textbooks of
Mhm.
addition, subtraction, or whatever. And I understood how to do it, but she said as it was on the page. So I'm going across and then going down and then doing this whole like spiraling square so I can make it look like it is just on the page. And I'm secretly terrified I'm going to do horrible because I'm overwhelmed at this point. And I got in trouble for that. They're like, "You're a weirdo. You can't do this. What are you doing?" And so to this day, I get a format in my head that I see that's applied to something that I'm trying to do, and I want to follow it. And I think that's one of the reasons I like home brewery, because when I look at the end product, it looks like a D&D product, and it follows the same format and style and outline as a D&D product. It's one of the things I really liked about it.
Okay. So that makes good sense. Much as it might not be pleasant to compose in HTML, what that might mean is that you could already be in the right place. Because if what you want is every rendered version looks instantly like the source book should,
Yeah.
then options are pretty limited. You could work in Word and just have a really kick-ass template, but who wants to do that if you're not getting paid for it?
Yeah.
Like, I do not touch Microsoft Word unless my paycheck is involved somehow.
Don't blame you. Don't blame
You could work in LaTeX, but I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, LaTeX is tough, but I mean, LaTeX would give you like a perfectly formatted document every time. Because that was one of the things I saw with a home brewery and even GM Binder is that the format breaks a lot of the time. Like you enter the information, renders it, and it's just like you're, and try and create like some sort of third column that's just way off the side of the page, and it's just like you can't see it at all.
Yeah.
Or at least that's my experience with this shit. It's just, ugh.
That's been my problem with home brewery.
Apart from that, like, you could go nuts and start composing directly in something like Adobe InDesign, which I'm pretty sure is what they actually typeset the D&D source books in these days.
Yeah. Well, the
But
big
that's,
benefit,
you know,
like the
You can't see it, but I'm making the fingers rubbing together money gesture right now.
yeah, I think that the big benefit,
Get that Adobe software, they want you coin for it, traveler.
I think the big benefit that the big guys have is that they'll take a whole plethora of writers and be like, okay, you're doing halflings, you're doing fighters, you're doing elves, and then they just come together and they have all this information and they have a separate team that's like, okay, let me format this out according to our guideline.
Exactly. They've got division of labor. Typesetting is its own whole bit of nonsense that a lot of writers don't really care to deal with.
It's very true. And I think I should point out too that my number one hang up, my number one speed bump, roadblock, whatever, is that I am lazy.
Yes.
Mood. I have ADHD, so like there's a reason, but mood.
So it's something that I'll definitely look at, like what Ginkgo suggested and some of the suggestions that you guys have made as well. But before we go too deep down that rabbit hole, let's get into the meat and potatoes. For Christmas, I should dye my beard green. That's
a very strange suggestion.
You know, as a former punk rocker, it wouldn't bother me. I don't think green's my color, but stripe it. How about that?
Yeah.
Maybe a nice Christmas plaid.
Plaid would be good.
Man.
Plaid would be good.
So, the thing I'm really excited about, and the thing I really want to get out, and there's a lot of that, so think I'm ignoring anything in particular, but the thing I really want to get is our subclasses. We have, or I have, neglected subclasses for far too long.
I'll be right back, y'all.
Zoom in here so that it's visible on screen. Look at that. It's so cool. Only not. Yeah, this should be readable for the most part, I think. You can tell like we're a total like pro setup here. A lot of these are from you guys' direct recommendations from playing the classes. And some of them are my own. Most important thing is we definitely want to get these in there so that we can kind of expand on what's out there right now. So with Prim kind of AFK for a sec, let's scroll down. These are some of the ideas I had for the spiritualist a while back. And the spiritualist, as we've spoken about, needs some love.
There, as we've discussed, and I'll pull up the Cairne source book here alongside it, but the main thing, as I pointed out in the last one and that we've been thinking on for a little while here, is that the spiritualist doesn't have a lot of combat built into it. An average character could assemble enough proficiencies in one direction or another to put together decent combat. You know, you could be a Becht and you could pick up firearm proficiencies that way. I feel like any kind of multi-classing really improves the situation, just like I had Listener multi-class into Arcanist, and now he's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve. But the actual class features present a lot of good roleplay and a couple of practical, valuable mechanical skills, but nothing that allows the class to engage in combat in its own way.
Yeah, and we have discovered the overall usefulness.
Yes.
Overplay as far as practical usefulness.
Yes, it's very practical. Even me finding this weird corner case, Listener is an incredibly practical character. He gets a lot of just otherwise challenging things done.
And you guys have played it, and you in particular have played him in a very thoughtful and very creative way. And of course, I've always said that I wanted Cairne to put the advanced back in D&D. I wanted it to be challenging, and I wanted it to feel dangerous and difficult and make you think outside the box and put you in situations where you weren't just going to bowl through it, you know. And you've risen to that occasion at every turn.
I can't imagine a single part of the campaign that we've ever just kind of tried to roll through. that hasn't happened.
Yeah, well, you guys learned early on in the very beginning, that first kind of dungeon delve you did at the very beginning, what happens if you're not careful, I think, when you guys got hit with the chlorine gas trap. And like to this day, like some of you still feel the effects of that trap.
Sorry, Master Miss.
But now for me as a DM, and you guys can tell me if I'm off base too. For me as a DM, watching your story unfold, especially as long as it's gone, and seeing that from that incident so far back that you still kind of carry the scars and effects of that injury to this day almost make it more not even necessarily realistic, although it is, but also more of an impactful event in your character's life and experience.
I certainly vibe with this. Certainly, I've had listener change so dramatically
Yes.
that obviously I enjoyed that too.
Yeah.
We had to kind of connive a little bit to get me exiled from the Ogham, but I think it was worth it.
It was a great
Absolutely worth
story
it.
beat. It was a great story beat.
Oh my god, that night was. Whew.
Oh yeah, it was a great story beat. And welcome back, Master Miss. I think you missed us talking about your chlorine gas injury and how it still affects you to this day. Um, oh, yeah. It was interesting. And I was really curious how it was going to play out, and I know you guys were actually in kind of dire straits during that moment for a minute there. And it came down to, like I said, you had the codex word wheel on the door puzzle, and somebody, I think it was Master Miss, kind of just went up and was like, "I'll just start flipping letters."
I would just flip some.
Yep.
So on the subject of subclasses, I have a question for you in regards to, I guess, if I can just kind of lay this out about what I was thinking, and that is because I don't think it necessarily fits in a subclass. It may have to do with the race, but um so one of the things that I struggled with a little bit coming in, well, because I think I came in halfway through, which was a year and a half ago. But one of the things I struggled with was I knew that there was so much history, like really old world building history, that then I have this character who has, comes from the Hyverstedians, and one of the things I kind of struggled with a little bit, and that I feel like it's something I want to really to work towards reconciling, is this idea of knowing so much what the backstory and the world away history was. But what about the present and what's going on? And when I say that, it is the idea of, yes, Hyverstedians were bred to be killed, fighting machines long ago. But where is it that you perhaps see this? Where is it because that necessity isn't really there? Where is the sort of transformation or transition that occurs? I mean, you're still probably you still have this sort of innate, this is your culture, this is what you do. And the reason I ask this is because I actually uh, misplayed my character in our last session because I was thinking about another character, but it still made sense. And what I mean by that is I'm playing a fighter, but I'm a Hyverstedian. And because of the other cultures that I've come across, would it not make sense that there's either a subclass or there's some aspect of the Hyverstedians that has particular skills? And so those would be like the smithy type skill. Because the idea of that, if you're a fighting machine and you have weapons, and so the idea of the artillerist, or how do you say it, artillerist,
Artillerist, yeah.
yeah, artillerist and metalsmithing and all this stuff and stonework, because it is innately no one has an idle hand, right? When you're working in this, you have a function, you're being functional. So I just kind of want to throw that out there because I feel that, is it that these are things that are under they just get picked up because they're under this, all right, I'm a fighter, but are these subclasses you would put there? But I see that you have a lot of these under artist. So that's what I just want to kind of toss out there, because I think there's a lot of things that there's a lot of potential there. And
Well,
so how can we explore that and integrate that
so
both between the classes and the
I get where you're coming from, and I actually like where you're coming from. I think the idea of an artillerist subclass, for instance, would be great. It'd probably be like a fighter subclass, since we have the gunslinger subclasses for fighters and whatnot already, where it would just focus on heavy weapons more than the standard Um, and we do have a lot more D&D referenced firearm rules now since the advent of Critical Role.
D20 modern and all that.
Oh, with Critical Role making the pepper box
Oh yeah.
popular. I've actually looked over some of the rules, and it's more arcane than we are, to a degree, as far as how they work. And it's a lot of, like, almost supernatural trick shots and stuff. And whereas our gun rules tend to be a little more realistic. You know, when Uki fires a pellet from her rifle, it's a ka-doom, and it's a straight shot, hit or nothing, pretty much, you know.
And then she's got to reload for an entire round sometimes.
Exactly, but it's realistic in that sense, and she can, especially as a fighter, fire the musket, set it down, pull out a pistol, fire it, pull out the other pistol, fire it, and so she's dangerous in that regard. But we have expanded over gameplay the Hyverstedian industrialist nature, not necessarily in line so much with the Kolvart or the Bechlorite empires with their very high education and very engineering based industrialism, but a more utilitarian and militaristic, like Corps of Engineers type. I could see the Hyverstedians being very good at civil engineering, for instance.
Well, okay, so I think this begs a very interesting question, what you've brought up here, Snacks. I think, as it stands, maybe even in the more recent version of the source book than I have, all of the player races have the slightly more broad and kind of like they've done it in the latest 5e source books. Gain proficiency in a skill of your choice and feat of your choice as a racial feature, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That totally aligns with that.
Yeah, so would you rather those be locked into a smaller selection per race, or would you rather keep it broad like that where you can make them whatever?
I don't know. I'd have to think that over a little bit, because I think about, because I do think about these abilities that the idea of, okay, in my head it was much easier, it would seem more intuitive to be able to do some of the things that Uki did with Kaz when it came to going down and finding and assessing, using her tinkerer's tools and assessing something that they found. And so the idea of like meta, I can spell it, metallurgy. Help me, somebody.
Metallurgy.
Metallurgy. Okay, for example, more so than the one thing that I'm having difficulty reconciling in my own head, and it could be because of the way I play Uki, is how is Uki so comfortable with using pitch? Because yeah, it's a firearm, but the idea is that it's a void weapon. It's something that is supernatural. So where is it? That's something I've never really kind of come around to reconcile, as far as what maybe it's part of why she didn't play it until the very end, because she kind of forgot about this, because it wasn't really something that was in her traditional type of firearms, right?
Is she fully aware it's an arcane effect?
Yeah, is she fully aware? But one of the things that I did in order to kind of what I did to trigger it was, the way I described it when we came in there was, I felt the warmth of pitch. Pitch is strapped across my back. I'm not really needing to use it along my others, and I could feel it start to react to the environment we were in. And that was how the reminder is like, oh, I have this. And that was sort of the kind of unconsciously reacting to that arcane weapon because of how it was triggered by the scenario that we were in.
Mm-hmm. Which was very well played. Very well played. And the Hyverstedians, I would say, don't have any more of a disinclination, I think that's a word, a disinclination towards magic than any other race, for instance. I think they're very practical people, and if a Hyverstedian, from a practical standpoint, sees magic as the best means to an end within that practicality, they wouldn't be opposed to using it because they are very military minded. So, like in a military situation, for instance, morals aside, using a huge bomb on your enemy is the practical solution rather than throwing troops at it and losing men and costing countless resources. In that regard, I think a Hyverstedian wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah, and on the subject of pitch, particularly, like, it is like an arcane weapon, but I think it more or less is, like, works like a normal firearm, with the exception of, like, calling out Rancor to, fire it. Because I think it started out being developed as, like, just a normal firearm, and then something happened to make it the magical weapon that it is. So I don't think that pitch as a weapon would be all that, like, foreign to Uki.
Yeah, because
That's the read that I get.
It says the weapon itself, and this is reading from the description, is no different than any other standard issue arquebus used by the Empire at the time. The only weird thing is that it doesn't use ammunition.
Which alone makes it really quite valuable.
Yeah. Not having to put lead shot in it to fire it is a big deal. But now, Uki, I will say too, as with all you guys, you are playing the Hyverstedian. So I have my ideals and I have the core that I've written, but you right now are the one breathing life into it. In fact, I was just thinking about, and sorry about the train going by, I was just thinking about our Hyverstedian playtesting the other day, and I don't think it's ever come up in game. I don't think any of you have ever openly spoken about Shillelagh really with Uki.
Nope, don't believe we have.
And the irony of that, aside from the fact that I loved Shillelagh as a character, Shillelagh was the daughter of Panuk, the leader of the Hyverstedians.
And it is made more tragic because, quite simply, I don't think any of us would have known the significance.
I don't think so either.
Uh,
But if her whole name were ever mentioned, for instance, if any of you actually knew her whole name, was ever mentioned, for instance, to Uki, Uki would pick up on it right away, the significance of who that person was.
I think it was mentioned once. I took pretty detailed notes in the beginning.
Did it?
And I remember writing that down, but I don't remember what it was.
So the information is out there then. And I say that
Right.
just as an interesting potential RP beat, once again, if that ever comes up.
Yeah, because it seems that it is one of those things that I did not, I'm trying. So essentially, the way that I played Uki is that she really hasn't had a lot of experience being around arcane and mentalists and spiritualists. That this encounter with the party has really broadened her exposure to other races. She's heard about them and such. And so because of that also, even though, yes, I had read through the playbook, I hadn't gone through, like I just found the Shillelagh document that was created. It was actually created 9 months before I started playing. So
Yeah.
I never familiarized, but I could see that, yes, by all means, if this had been something I would have, because I do think that, and that is one of the things is Uki's never told the party really who she is. She hasn't said told because she's tight-lipped, so she hasn't spoken all about her her background, her history, her family. And I do feel that she probably is descended and related to Shillelagh. That she is because she's part of the Canute
Hmm.
legacy somewhere down there. Maybe with you know,
Which will be a
maybe
very
through the father's second marriage or something.
that'll be a very interesting story beat too. And one of the things I really want to do as the campaign creeps forward towards the Domes of the Shining Eyes is I do want to give you guys an opportunity to just sit down and roleplay with one another. Um, I know we get those chances with Sigil because we have the Wickletongue nights and whatnot, so, and you guys get a chance to just kind of unwind and get to know one another in character. And ever since you guys suggested that and we started doing it, I really think it has been a huge boon to roleplay for those characters because you are actively getting to know one another in character and it's building those relationships on a level that's not, oh my god, we're all gonna die,
Yeah.
constantly. And
Well, more than that, I think we also just like need moments to talk about shit back in headquarters. Like, I think what happened not last episode on Sigil, but the time before last was a big character development moment for both Jimmy and Bryn. Um, just because like they, got to experience things and talk about things that like sort of developed their characters in like interesting ways. So basically, we just need moments to talk.
well,
Regardless.
yeah, go ahead, Master Miss.
I found it. I took 8 pages of notes creating my character.
I love
And
it.
then on our first day on June 6, 2020, it was said when we did our character introductions along with William Ignatius Abernathy Medicus Corridor. Shillelagh's full name is Shillelagh Alape Dyke Panook.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think I missed a name there.
Well, now, Almond, God love her, God we miss her. She leaned very heavily on the Inuit culture, which, I've always said the Hyverstedians are a blend of kind of Inuit culture and Norse culture, kind of melded together. And Uki's definitely picked up on that as well, which is brilliant. I really like that combination for some reason. It just really works in my mind very well. And I think that part of that culture is a very tight family unit culturally. Even though it is very militaristic at the same time, like in the battlefield, a Hyverstedian would not need to be told you don't leave a man behind. If a Hyverstedian saw you drop, they would grab you and pull you along, even if it led to their demise, because it's a matter of honor. You don't leave people behind. You know what I mean? That type of thing, and it comes from that family, tight family unit, where everyone is your brother and your sister or your cousin. Unless you're married to them, hopefully.
And that and I would say that's the real. I would say if I had to look back over, because again, I think I started with this party December of 2021, and I would definitely say there are 3 pivotal moments that I was playing my character, as opposed to, I know there's some great wonderful moments when George played me, but I think back to the things that I think are the most pivotal moments are definitely, and well, if I go 3, 2, 1, the third is definitely the going out under the
Your tea.
the Orti, and getting the hole in my suit and nearly dying, uh, and in a situation I didn't like being out of water.
Yeah.
That was thing one. And number two was when somebody was overcome by one of the arcane void weapons and nearly killed their mentee, and I picked up that shovel and the coal bin, so that was a huge moment. But the top one was definitely the loss of Kaz. That
Yes.
Ubi is still struggling with the loss of Kaz because Kaz was, because in three she was able to be saved. The party helped with that. In the second, she helped her party mates. But the top is she's suffering from that loss of a comrade
Yeah.
and not knowing where he is and feeling guilt over leaving him behind.
Yeah. And I will say that I have actually picked up on that from roleplay. It is, it's actually very well done the way you've done it, very subtle, but at the same time very present and very dignified in the way that she's suffered, which is kind of what you'd expect from a Hyverstedian.
Well, because she's pretty quiet about it. She
Yeah.
doesn't really like put it out there, but it's having this huge conflict because at the same time she has a responsibility to the party that she's with.
Yeah, but she's
So it is,
also the most vocal about what about Kaz.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's great. And those are really great pivotal moments. Um, in fact, one of the things I love about World of Cairn as a campaign so far is I feel like most everyone has had a chance to kind of step into the spotlight at some point and really develop um, like these really key incidents that have happened that have changed you forever and whatnot. And some of it is the hardness of the world. Some of it is the importance of the mission that you're on and how relevant it is to each of you in different ways. We've had the OM get cut off from the hive mind and go rogue because he disagreed.
Over one dead shadow dragon.
over a dead shadow dragon. But it was totally in character. It made complete sense and it was great. We've had
It was time.
Saoirse has gone from this meek little tiny thing just coming out of the woods, terrified of everything around her, to this absolute, like, stoic force of nature that is just out to change the world.
Saoirse stoic though? Nah.
She is resolute in what she does. She does not hesitate anymore.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call her stoic because stoic to me just brings up this image of like this stony face, like
I would go with determined.
yeah,
Determined.
hopeful, determined, optimistic, literally become like the physical embodiment of like a bright ray of sunshine. That is Saoirse.
She has not broken. I will say that despite everything that has happened to Saoirse, despite losing as many people as Saoirse has lost along the way, seeing the horrors that she has seen and having the horrors grab her in many cases, she is still sunshine, as Genesis likes to call her.
Yeah.
Speaking of me, what did I turn into?
You?
Besides a murderer, okay.
Well, no, you have actually come from in Genesis's story. Everybody still doesn't completely know, but I know. Well, I know, but I will say this: Genesis has come from somebody who is not entirely sure of themselves, I think. And I think a lot of the backstory actually works very well for how she started without getting into the details of it. But Genesis's backstory makes sense that as she came out into the world and joined the group here, that she wouldn't have been entirely sure of herself. She would have had a lot of self-doubt and other internal conflicts going on. And it showed in the very beginning. She was very kind of quiet, not really sure what she did. And every time she did step out, it was kind of like an overstep and got herself into trouble. And then she met Saoirse and kind of got close with Saoirse along the way. And she found a purpose there. And it's a purpose that, once again, I think plays into her backstory very well, because there is a void in that backstory that Saoirse fills, which is why Saoirse is so important to Genesis, and why Genesis will murder people literally to protect her.
But I also think that when Uki first met everyone, that Genesis was extremely protective
Mhm.
of, and yet I think that as they both kind of matured and grown out of themselves, that Genesis has this respect now that, oh, I don't have to always be the protector. And it's, I have to say, we're talking about role playing, but I realize that there are often times in my own life where I feel like I'm always trying to be over. I don't realize I'm being overprotecting until I step back and actually say, you know what, just gonna let you do this on your own. And then I'm surprised. It's like, but wait a minute, what am I enabling, or am I helping someone be stronger, right?
What?
And I've seen that evolution definitely between and that relationship between Genesis and Saoirse over the last, gosh, definitely like over the last 8 to 10 months.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, it's very true.
that's my observation. Anyway.
Yeah. Further observations from me, like, Genesis is very much a fighter. Like, I mean, you told us enough about Genesis' backstory that she's witnessed some absolute horrors. But yet, like, Genesis is one who fights for life
Mhm.
on Cairn. Like, Saoirse is hope, and like Genesis is the one who like is in front of her, like, paving the way, like, tearing down the monsters to like make a path for the healing to come to the world. Like, in my mind, the Shawnekeesians have two colors that are very culturally important to them, and that is yellow and red, because they are representative of sunshine, which in the mind of Shawnekeesians is like the thing that gives life, and red is representative of blood, which in their mind is basically the essence of life. So in Saoirse's mind, like, if she's sunshine, then Genesis is blood. She is the life essence.
I like that. That's really good.
I
I do. I like that. And while we're going through, um, I do want to point out, number one, Genesis, as we've just discussed, Genesis is the embodiment of everything I wanted the Ventrite people to be. The life, the absolute just pursuit of real freedom, without bond, without bind, without anything in the way. I will be who I am going to be, and I will stab you in the throat if you say otherwise. and that
Okay, now I feel kind of bad for saying what I'm about to say.
Uh-oh. Go ahead.
uh, Small confession. I only read the Venturite page for my race once.
It must have stuck with you.
It must have
I
stuck.
I only read it the one time. I put everything on my character sheet that I had, like bonuses and stuff, like a +1 to perception, for instance, and like the languages that I know and stuff. That's it.
Well, it worked though.
It's okay. I picked.
Does work.
Yeah.
I picked my race because the page had a cool picture, and then
Yeah.
I had to play around that.
It makes me wonder if there were times when I could have done better
No.
on a situation because like if I didn't know like the important aspects of my own history, then would my character have performed better if they had access to that knowledge?
No, you have not strayed from the ideal of the Ventrites. I mean, they are a literal, functional, anarchistic society. So, being a little wild and loose and not adhering to any one form of thought other than freedom in its purest form is exactly the right thing to do. So, you captured that regardless of history. You know enough of the history from role playing. I think that you're perfectly fine. Like, you know the Ventrites work with the Galduina and trade with the Galduina and aren't kill on sight for the Galduina, which is a big deal.
Right.
You know that they live a loose lifestyle. From your backstory, you know the dangers that are inherent in their way of life because the way they are. Your character has experienced that firsthand and suffered for it. So, I mean, you haven't done anything wrong. Trust me there. And I could say similar things about each one of you, like how you have managed to embody the culture of the races that you're playing. Like Jacob, with the way he's captured the Ogham, he identified them. He didn't just play them, he identified them. He brought them to the forefront and took this little blurb I had and said, this is what that means, which is brilliant. Because now all of you, when you think of the Ogham, you think of Listener. And Listener is the Ogham. Even now that he's disconnected, he is still the Ogham. And that's so perfect in that regard, even with the mannerisms and the speech style. And
You can take the plant out of the collective, but you can't take the collective out of the plant.
exactly. And it's brilliant.
He still slips up with an I every now and then.
Yeah.
He's getting better about
He's
it.
getting better. But I mean, he's
I
the
found
one.
an-
He's the one that coins the term I, which is
Well-
now.
Oh, we can pass this over to the Rastafarians.
Lol.
Much love to them.
He added it to the
Yep.
Cairne lore.
It's canon now. That is how all Ogham will refer to themselves and the collective.
Yeah, I found a term for that, by the way.
What's that?
Expositional RP.
Oh, there you go.
That's a nice way to think of it.
But yeah, I mean it. I can say the same about all of you. Like, and the person I really want to tag here is Wilhelm.
Hey.
Wilhelm is a fascinating example of the Becklerite. And the irony is he's so kind as a character and so soft-spoken and calm and willing to take whatever abuse is thrown at him and still step forward and say, you know what, I understand. I'm sorry you feel that way. Let me put a Band-Aid on that for you. He is the embodiment not only of Becklerite intellectual culture in its good form, because the Becklerite are made out very easily to be the villains of the story, and the Becklerite people are not the villains of the story. Sovereign, the sovereign that made the decision to
Damus.
pull Damus, thank you, mind fart.
Yeah.
Sovereign Damus III pulled down, the Nether into Cairne. He was tricked into doing it. As you guys remember, you were there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we were
Yep.
there.
He tricked into doing it, manipulated, and the Becklerite people kind of took the blame. But at the same time, they also suffered. They suffered a huge civil war that tore their empire apart. Many, many lives after the Blight fell. Just this constant state of war going. So they suffered in their own right. And I think Wilhelm embodies that intellectual nature, that soft-spoken nature, in the sense that there's almost this humbleness to it, where I don't have to defend myself. I know what happened. I know what was wrong. I've been educated on it. And here he is, the benevolent, trying to make up for it in a way. And especially with people that normally would hate him. You know, he and Saoirse are so close now, which is such an amazing story beat for these two cultures, because they're natural enemies in the wild, so to speak, you know, especially if you throw like the burnt crows in. And even when we did have a burnt crow in the party, Wilhelm earned her respect. And I think Wilhelm really stands out to me because of how Wilhelm, despite everything that happened, Wilhelm is the one exception. Wilhelm has not changed. He has maintained his mission and his goal unwaveringly. And I think more than anyone, every loss that your party has suffered, he feels deeper than most.
Wilhelm is the reason why Uki stayed with this party in the first few days. Because essentially being in a life or death situation and not understanding why Ray's like, you know, dealing with other trauma, and we're about to get killed inside the circus tent or whatever you call it, and Wilhelm's like that. Nope, we got something to do, and it was an uncomfortable, awkward moment because there's Uki going survival and not realizing that, you know, how the impact of the decision. But because Wilhelm stepped up, it's like, nope, yep, we got something to do, and let's get this done. That was what you said about being the constant. I mean, that was a huge thing. She had been observing this party for a bit, but you know, there are moments where she was questioning whether or not this is the right fit for her.
Oh yeah.
For her in the party. And then because of that, though, learning from everyone else after spending the time and learning about, you know, having no concept whatsoever what listener is, learning her own patience and the idea of you can't always do a shoot first, ask questions later, because obviously she still wants to be tactical and strategic, but when she's within a group that don't have that same kind of background, it was Wilhelm who definitely had the intelligence and had that, you know, kind of the idea of let's think this through rationally, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's kind of the anchor of the group. Even when there is infighting within the group, like roleplay infighting, Wilhelm's the one that will step up and get in the middle of it, with logic, usually, as to why we can't be doing this right now. And as a player, I really have to give him credit. Give you credit. I know you're in the room here.
I am. I'm just being quiet, yes.
I have to give you credit for the amount of research, time, and effort that you put into a very difficult class, the healing roleplay, and what it takes to heal in Cairne.
I have a question for you, actually, Jay, about Wilhelm.
Oh, that Jay.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got a couple going around. Where do you see his arc going? Because I've got a decent read, I think, on what people want from their characters here. Where do they envision their personal growth taking them? Where do you see Wilhelm going?
I'm gonna let you guys all in a big secret.
Oh.
I don't like being a benevolent anymore. I'm not actually a fan of the class.
That's exciting.
I was going to talk to you towards the end, but it doesn't feel like the class is working. I feel like there's something wrong with it,
Okay.
and I'm not sure. I've been feeling this way for a while, to be honest.
Mhm.
So I've been trying to come up with like what could I like ideas to throw out because I just don't want to say this doesn't feel like it's working. I want to at least have some thoughts on how we could like change it.
Yeah. Well, no, that's fine.
That's
I've
why we're
actually
here.
been. So I had a couple ideas, but actually one of I was definitely thinking about multi-classing. I've been toying around with this idea of trying to build a non-magical paladin almost.
Okay.
I've been writing stuff down for this.
Oh, good.
Basically, I was gonna call it the beacon. Was the way I was thinking of it. It's someone who just by the sheer personality almost things are gonna be okay because this person is. They provide the rock, so it only works within like a small group.
A small group like a hive mind? Question mark.
Interesting.
So
I wasn't more like with a party. So only the party would get benefits from this thing.
So originally my my idea for the oh my god, I'm having a lot of brain farts tonight. Bear with me.
Benevolent.
That one particular class, I think, or
The
not
Wraith
the
the Wraith
subclass?
Guard. My
Okay.
original idea for the Wraith Guard was that they would be basically a non-divine type paladin. Unfortunately, the nature of their history is really what kind of screwed that when we play tested it. And yeah, Cranky, we can talk about that later. Because their whole thing is they were mage hunters, basically, and mages were the evil of the world in a way, at least in the initial inception.
Yeah, and that doesn't exactly work. Then, when more likely than not, you're going to have like some casters in the party, or in a party, or at least like people who have very caster-like abilities, even if they're not necessarily using magic.
Yeah.
I think we had to kind of put our foot down with the one that we had in the party initially that Chance played.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, Saoirse was very, very like scared around Sugnak.
Well, and it makes sense because Sugnak, the Wraith Guard, I think. I won't do away with them as NPCs. I think they make a great NPC faction. But as a playable race or class, it is too disruptive.
Agreed.
It'd be like if we literally had a member of the Harmonium in the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Sigil.
Yeah,
No.
not that he didn't play it well. It's just that what he was given to play was inherently like conflict oriented.
I will say that there's some ideas within the Wraith Guard that we may be able to pull from for Wilhelm's idea.
Yeah.
Some of the like abilities and whatnot that they have.
Well, I want to pick apart his opening statement here because he's put in the hours. I want to hear some thoughts on the benevolent.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
If I can go back for a second to what you were talking about, the character. Wilhelm, in my mind, is basically a paladin. He's a non-violent paladin.
I could see that.
The closest I've come to playing it. He stands up, defend everyone. That's pretty much his personality to me. But going back to the not liking it, there's a couple things that stick out to me.
Okay.
The first is, for instance, it takes long, and that's. I know that you went for the healing being harder. Like you said, you're putting the advance back in. Problem is, it almost feels like the benevolence is doing that, but some of the other classes aren't. For instance, the musicians coming clean. That can handle diseases, while a benevolent doesn't get antibiotics till 10th level.
Yeah. And we did talk about that too at some point, that some of the alternative healing skills from other classes do kind of step on the benevolence toes in that regard.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it would almost benefit us for me to use everything that I have right before we long rest to try to heal everyone as best I can and use my points in that way. I mean, we did that. I think when
Yeah.
somebody
Exactly.
broke their leg, right? The resource management, and I looked at playing a benevolent before I chose to play a mentalist because of the resource management. Um, you know, you got to find plants, you got to do all this stuff, you got to forage, you have to have a high nature roll. When do you ever use nature except for when you're finding plants? Never, you know.
Well, let me ask this real quick.
Sorry.
No, no, that's what this is for. Um, would it be beneficial for the benevolent to make the benevolent feel like that's not an issue if the other classes didn't have those abilities, or do you think the benevolent's just too weak in general?
Honestly, my first thought when and I was trying to, I honestly spent a lot of today trying to figure out how to phrase my thoughts.
Oh, well, be
It
blunt. You're
almost
not going to
feels
hurt my
like
feelings.
well, no, I want to at least, just being mean has no purpose. I want to like explain what I'm thinking and feeling because this is my thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
It almost feels like an NPC class.
Okay. So, well, let's
Like there are a lot of really the abilities too. For instance, there's a lot of abilities, but honestly, almost too many.
the way the
So,
sciences are all broken up. You mean?
like, there are abilities that honestly I probably would never even use.
Okay.
Yeah, and just quick interjection. I do feel like the classes having too many abilities is a problem for all of the classes. Like the musician and the artist and others don't need to be gaining something at every level.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we gained a lot by having a lot of people that were capable of healing. Because when we had near death fatalities or injuries, of like listener getting his legs cut off, we were able to mend those um, injuries
Working
in
together.
time, working, yeah, as a team. Which I mean, I would hate to see that teamwork go away, but at the same time, if we're able to, ad lib it or just try
Well,
to pull it out of our hats or whatever.
so with the benevolent in particular, you think simplifying some of these abilities or maybe bundling them into like one larger ability with several uh, of the included ones already and spacing them out or something might help? Or is it just the overall responsibility of having to actually like basically do medicine?
It's a little make little column B. Some of the abilities we could like probably get rid of. Like the one that came to mind immediately was triage. That's not something we're probably ever gonna use. Triage. I have a small enough group that, and yes, if I end up in a situation where I'm trying to deal with a large number of people, but
Yeah.
I can
how
recall you
often?
using that like once.
Yeah.
I don't even think I use triage because that's the breaking down of order of people. I probably used. I mean, I've got.
You've done triage, but you haven't used the skill triage.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
No, no, no. This is exactly what we need.
I've got 17 different abilities at ninth level, and I don't have chemistry, which is how you make antibiotics to fight diseases. I
Chemistry's at 10th, it looks like.
yeah.
So I tell you what.
And then it gives you gunpowder?
Well.
I know. This is a lot.
No. You're fine. I'm going over things in my head, as far as remembering what all I wrote there. Do you have any ideas as far as reordering or combining items that you would make the class more playable?
The couple ideas I've had are, the first is the D4. At first level, he can heal a D4 with the herbalist abilities.
Okay.
Having that actually scale.
So scaling.
So it, like, for instance, at 5th level, it turns into a D8.
Would it go to D8 or D6, do you think?
I'm not sure. I'll be honest. I think that's a conversation.
Me
But yeah, I
personally,
think-
I'd be inclined to go a gradual scaling, just because healing is meant to be a slow process.
Personally, I would go D4, D6, D8, and then D10, and play it like the Bard's Bardic Inspiration die. So it's D4 at level 1, D6 at level 5, D8 at level 10, D8 at level 10 and D10 at level 15. That's how I would do it personally, but yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
that sounds solid.
how much
what about-
damage did listener sustain when he got his legs cut off?
Just, and also quick intervention, like
That
that increase in like your healing dice, like that could be the sort of class feature you gain at those levels, sort of like it is for bards, more or less, because bards don't get anything at like those levels in particular. I don't think. It's just you get the bardic inspiration die increase. So I think that should be the route, or one change that I would suggest to benevolent.
Yeah.
That
Anyways,
sounds good to me. Another one is, maybe instead of having to find the items, like he has a certain number of times per day, kind of like he automatically. I'm trying to.
So
I don't want to say like magical, but kind of like the benevolent already has prepared enough uses for this many per day. Like during a long rest, a benevolent crafts such and such amount.
kind of like
Maybe-
how a wizard gets spells on a level up. It's like they don't magically learn spells, but it's like whenever a wizard in normal D&D levels up, it's just you learn a certain number of new spells, and it's just assumed that you sort of found and have been studying those spells whenever your character levels up, sort of deal. Like whenever you level up, you don't have to go on a mission to actually go and find the spells that you took on a level up, sort of deal.
yeah.
It's
Although
just, yeah.
I was gonna say, even within Cairne though, like as an arcanist, you don't get spells without going and looking for them.
What if we look to like Tasha's alchemist?
But
Uh,
I'm wary of pulling for Tasha's from
no, I know,
too
but,
much.
like
Yeah.
as reference, kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
it's a
yeah. Go ahead.
class
Sorry.
that's based around like making potions for storing these spell effects ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I can understand
your
having a
healing effects, or like maybe an acid or something, but I doubt
Yeah.
Wilhelm's going to be throwing acid bombs at people. He doesn't really seem like the type.
Yeah.
But-
Well, he
Also-
not necessarily, but
This isn't just about Wilhelm. This class will obviously be with other people who aren't nearly as
Non-violent.
well, you
Exactly.
have to keep in mind the benevolent does have existing subclasses.
Yes.
It's one of the ones that does, including the ones that Wilhelm himself has submitted. Was the apothecary yours? Was that
The apothecary is mine, yes.
Yeah.
That was actually where it was my first attempt to, I am really not enjoying this class. What can I do to try to make it so that I enjoy it more? Was actually creating that subclass.
Yeah. And the benevolent does have those. He also has. I'm pull it up here. The field medic, the researcher,
Yes.
the heretic, and the benevolent paradigm. The benevolent paradigm's actually kind of close to a paladin. And I know you had talked about potentially going that route at one point. They literally get
And
like
that-
an aura and everything.
Yeah, that was actually part of my thought process, was because that actually is what I was before I created the apothecary, because I had the empathic attunement.
So, all right. So, getting rid of things like triage, the lesser used. So here's what I would like you to do, if you would. Wilhelm.
Certainly.
Give me a list of the skills
Dad,
that you think are
forget this.
not useful.
Here you go. You forget this.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Give me a list of the skills you think are useless or could be bundled with another. And help me reorder them in a way that you think would make more sense, that feels more useful and natural. And what we'll do is we'll reorder those as we're talking about. We'll do the scaling heal, like we mentioned, so that your ability to heal does scale up. And what we'll do as far as your gathering is, why don't we say that we give the benevolent a natural, I don't know, we can come up with a fancy title for it, but basically as they're traveling, they're always looking. And so every day you'll basically find between this many and this many items just traveling.
That's actually what I was trying to convey. Thank you.
Yeah.
Was
so,
as long as the benevolent has had like a long rest, he starts the day with 5 that he's gathered and made over the night.
so let's call it the constant forager.
Yeah, I would ask though, like, if it's intended for this world to be blight stricken,
Mhm.
how realistic is it that the plants that exist post blight are actually effective? Are they
Very.
turning them into something? Are they
Very
like
effective.
cleansing
Very
them?
No. All the plant life in Cairne, with rare exception, has mutated. Within the wastes, it is very hard to find plants. But if you've ever been to a desert or even like an actual wasteland, there is still a lot of vegetation there if you know where to look.
Yeah. One of the things I worried about for him was like when he was going out looking for stuff, as we got closer and closer and, went into territories that got worse and worse. I was like, oh God, is he gonna be okay? Like,
And that's the thing I think I'll do if we use this constant forager idea, right? Let's say over the course of your day, not necessarily taking the chance during your long rest to forage, but as you travel, you're always looking. You're like, oh, walking along, like, oh, here's this weird little herb. This could be handy. And we don't even have to role play it. It's just a natural part of what you do. And let's say we roll a d6 every day that you're traveling, and that's just how many items you find along the way. And then what I'll do in the back end is, if you get into an area where vegetation becomes sparse for whatever reason, I'll apply a 1 to 3 point penalty, let's say, depending on how severe of what you find as you're using your constant forager ability. So, like, if you're in just a place that's just destroyed, somebody dropped a nuclear bomb on it 5 days ago, you'd have a -3 penalty. Very unlikely you're going to find something useful. But if you're just walking through, say the commonage, you'll actually get a bonus. Or if you were to go plucking around in the volcanic oasis that you guys were just at, you'd get a bonus, that type of thing. Would that be more useful?
Yeah, because I mean, like, I'll be honest, I've been out of pretty much everything for a while, just because there wasn't anywhere.
Yeah, and some of that was intentional. I will say I wanted to harry you.
I
and
know.
Make it difficult, but I get what you're saying at the same time. Um,
Yeah, it's not fun when you can't play your class.
yeah,
Like I said, that's why it almost made me feel like an NPC is like, all right, this class is useless almost when it doesn't have the herbs to do anything.
yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah, it was like when Shun took away my instrument when we were playing Digging Deeper. I was literally a bard that couldn't do bard shit.
Oh,
That's okay though.
And also,
No.
fuck Kender forever.
Everybody
Rip.
hates Kender. Everybody hates Kender. That's just natural.
you're
But-
talking to the artificer who didn't have tools. Yes, I know you're.
Look, Kenders
Really
are
well.
what dungeon masters throw at parties when you want to antagonize them. But I will say this: if we do the skill adjustments, right, like what I talked about, reordering, bundling, adding the constant forager, is there anything else that might make the apothecary more useful? Like if we were to say, rather than sticking with the natural scientist, the apothecary that you have, since you're talking about trying to potentially go more along the lines of a paladin-esque, what if we were to go ahead and try to swap you over to, say, like the paradigm? We could even make some adjustments to it to bring it more in line with that idea.
I think we tried making the changes you and I've talked about, and we'll see how that plays. I don't want to change too much and like get the whole feeling different.
Okay.
That makes. We'll like I said, I'll write up this stuff, and then you and I can talk about the changes you and I've discussed, and then we'll see how that feels.
Well, yeah, and that's fine. And if you do decide you want to try it, change it too. Like it is okay. Based upon the adventure you guys have had, especially, a benevolent paradigm actually still having faith makes sense for where you guys have been. You know what I mean? You guys have touched divinity in more than anyone else in the world really has.
Plus, really, like, if you have faith that the world will get better, and you know, you're fighting for that future, I mean, that is a form of faith, even if it's not tied to any single religion.
Yeah. So it is something we can definitely do, and I will work with you, as always, you know.
It's like humanists.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'll work with you, Wilhelm, and we'll work on fixing it. And if you're still not happy, granted, your enjoyment of the game is paramount. So I think it would break everyone's heart to lose Wilhelm because he is a loved character. But
Yeah.
But it would break my heart more to see him not having a good
yeah,
time.
exactly. We want you to have a good time.
And I mean, there's a difference between Wilhelm and the benevolent.
Mm.
So I could still keep Wilhelm and just make him work some other way.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. But let's try it. Let's try
Yeah.
the skill rework and add these additions that we've talked about and see how that works. And this is why we're here. So yeah, don't hold back.
Yeah.
No, and like I said, I wanted to have ideas before I brought this to you, and
That's fine. Well, this is a big brainstorm in a way, anyway. So it's
Yeah.
good.
So, speaking of class reworks,
Mhm.
So there's a lot that we need to talk about, like with the musician. Like for one thing, we need to codify the song ranges. I brought it up a while ago of making these song ranges sort of like be fixated, like be fixed, and the same for every song that a musician plays. And I think that is something that should go up a level. I think at first level, it should be 30 feet. At 5th, 60 feet. At 10th, 90 feet. And 15th, 120 feet. And yeah, that's it. For
what are the ranges?
30, 60, 90, 120.
Okay, so like a ranged weapon kind of, and that's at
1st, 5th, 10th, and 15th for song effect ranges.
So no, I'm not opposed to this. So my asking this isn't a challenge, more of a curiosity,
Yeah.
because I do try to keep a kind of a grounded reason behind most things if I can, to some degree. And
Yeah.
granted, it's still a fantasy game.
Yeah.
But how would you explain your range increasing from a realistic point of view? Why would it be increasing? Are you learning to project as you get better, or is this the spirit of the music that's just pushing further?
I would call it learning to project, especially when the musician is effectively still a magic user. So I think it'd be like a learning to project, and then like a strength of the musician being correlated to the strength of the magic that you're producing. So maybe like your range increases, like as your skill and your strength increases, sort of giving you a greater ability to affect more people, more of the battlefield.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. I got no problem with that.
Yeah, so there's that. I mentioned this a while back, but I think you weren't as much of a fan with it, which is why we're left with the musician can play, any song, anytime, anywhere without like being tied down to spell slots, and we're left with the shenanigans of Saoirse being able to play Coming Clean like nonstop while we're on the island.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to mention this once again because I do think it's a good idea. Okay. The musician should be able to play like any song, anytime, anywhere without being tied to like a spell slot system, but after a certain number of times that a musician puts on a performance, then I think that every like song afterwards, as like a musician tries to play, I think they should start making con checks to be able to play the song. If they pass a con check, then they can play it. But if they don't, I think they incur a level of exhaustion. So it would allow the musician to push themselves in a situation like, if a situation is really dire, then like you can decide like if you want to take that risk or not.
All right. I like that.
Yeah.
No, we can work with that. And I mean, you can't. You are right, and I say this as a musician. You can't sit there and blast out song after song after song all day long. It
Right.
will destroy you.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I would even go so far as to say, potentially damage you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the what you I don't want to go too far into that and be like, yeah, you lost your voice. That'd be terrible.
That would be
Right.
very funny, but not great.
So I'm okay with this. Let's come up with, for lack of a better term, song slots. Like how many per level? Give me your recommendation, if you
I
would.
think I actually put that in the document I wrote. Hold on.
Did you? Okay.
I think so. Actually, no, I didn't. I may have mentioned it at one point because I mentioned it with respect to like one of the old subclasses that I came up with, and I think it was like 8 plus. I can't remember if it was 8 plus your musician level or 8 plus your charisma mod. I want to say it was 8 plus charisma mod, and then if you were a composer, then you could add proficiency bonus. But I also don't want to go with like composer. I don't want to go with the original subclasses that I came up with.
Yeah.
So maybe 8 plus charisma mod.
Well, since we're talking about an endurance feature, would it be 8 plus con? Because it's not so much your ability to dazzle your audience as it is being able to maintain the endurance to keep performing.
I feel like
yeah, that makes sense.
I have
And
a similar mechanic to that, kind of.
What's that?
I have a similar mechanic to that, like pushing past stuff.
Okay.
I think that's maybe where that came from, actually.
Oh yeah, with the mentalist.
Yeah.
yeah.
So 8 plus con mod?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that.
Okay.
Kind of feels bad for Shauna Keejans.
But that makes sense. And 8 songs before a rest is 8 plus your con mod before a rest isn't it? That's not terrible.
Right.
Ooh, -3. Oof.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Is Cersei's con really low?
No,
So
it's that-
Keishan's con or it's -3. Then
Oh, yeah,
stats.
that's
I have a
because of
+3 to
the-
charisma, but
Because of the damage they've taken in the blight.
yeah.
Yeah. I had to make a big decision of what stat I wanted to put into Dex and which one I wanted to put into Con. I, in the end, decided to put my higher of the two stats that I rolled into Con, so like I could keep an 11 Con and not have a negative Con mod.
But that's good though, because you do still have the charisma bonus to use the spells or the songs. So
Yeah.
I think this could work. Yeah. So we'll go with the range scaling based on level. The limited number of performances based on 8 plus con mod. You can push past that, but you have the
You've
con
got to
check,
make a you have to make a con save.
or obtain a level of exhaustion. Which I like that. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah. I also I saw this on Reddit because someone was like, "Oh, like I've been wanting to change the bard in D&D," and and like whenever this person that I saw mentioned their idea, it reminded me a hell of a lot of the musician in like a really weird way. I was just like, geez, Church came up with that one independently. But I think this would be a way to do the musician like in our world, and basically so you know how bards in D&D have counter charm.
Mm-hmm.
So, and obviously we have the different strains that musicians have, but it could be like that where musicians have sort of counter charm like effects, but the different strains have like different effects tied with them, like aside from just the emotional ones, like the laughing strain, the weeping strain. And what you could do is a musician's main mode of acting could be like one of the different strains, counter charm, things like that, or like a bard's counter charm, where that's the main thing that they're playing, and then the songs that they play could be like little flourishes that they add in the middle of a performance. So it's sort of like a one and done type deal. So that way it's just if you want to get off say twists and turns, then you can do that and go back to playing another song if you wanted to.
So stacking song effects?
Kind of, yeah. I think it not necessarily stacking, because obviously if you do twists and turns and you try to play another song that has sort of a sustained
Just a live
effect.
remix.
Basically, like, concentration rules.
Yeah,
for
yeah, that's kind of what I was
masters.
thinking. It kind of
Yeah.
gets into the concentration conundrum.
Yeah, so I'm not saying like you can literally stack concentration on concentration because I'm a bit no.
Yeah. It would be
but-
pretty powerful.
Yeah, but like if you had sort of a one and done effect, then like you could just play that while you're still playing like another like that's a flourish in the middle of like one of the strain songs. So it could be like a bard is playing counter charm, but they play a song in the middle of that, and it's like they can have the spell go off, but counter charm is still up. So that same idea, but for musicians. So maybe.
Sorry, go ahead. Tell me.
So maybe we could have like a few sort of weaker effects with like the strains, and then the songs could be like flourishes that they add in the middle.
So I really like this idea of the flourishes as a additional effect.
There's good precedent in like sorcerer meta magic and such.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking, is that we could come up with flourishes that a musician could use. And this is I'm being silly when I use this as an idea, although I suppose it could be. But say you're playing twists and turns, right?
Yeah.
And Saoirse decides to do a power slide as a flourish, right? Across the floor. She does a power slide, and as that flourish, it actually throws the opponent 5 feet.
Yeah, I was thinking of like improvisational musical flourishes.
Well,
like,
I mean, I'm
like
being silly with the idea. Yeah, I'm being silly with the power slide and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you're saying, a flourish that adds an effect.
Yeah, but I think like the flourishes should be like the actual songs, so that way, and the reason I bring this up, so that way like Saoirse wouldn't have to worry about like, say she has to stop playing Built Upon Rubble to go airworm and hit like some enemies with like twists and turns to like keep them down, and then go back to playing Built Upon Rubble. So I was thinking the strains could become like songs that she plays, and that's her main action, and then like she had, and the songs as they are now can become musical flourishes that she just sort of interjects into her main song that she's playing.
That's a pretty substantial change.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. But I was thinking of ways where it's like the musician could do more, if you get what I mean. Just because it feels like the musician can't be as active on the battlefield, and like I've mentioned this like several times before, and I think that would really solve a lot of things, just because like to maintain one certain effect, Saoirse has to keep playing, and I have several rounds where I'm just like, oh, well, I'll keep playing Built Upon Rubble, or I'll keep playing this song, or keep playing that song. So that would add more variety, where it's just like I'm still like playing this song, and as my action this round, like I want to like throw in this little flourish.
Okay, I tell you what, let's do this.
And one additional aside, just so it won't be too easy, in order to do that, let's bring back performance checks.
So
like you have to actually make a performance check to get that off.
Sorry, I'm making notes here. So, okay. If we did this, would they count towards your limited number of performances?
I don't think so.
Because we are basically talking about getting off a song effect.
Yeah, yeah, and
Even the sorcerer has to burn some sorcery points for meta magic effects.
right, so maybe we can make airworms into that resource, potentially.
Use airworms as performance points, basically.
Yeah, and then the strains like count against the usage, maybe.
Okay.
And I can see that fitting because, like, a flourish in the middle of a song, like, you know, just going off book to perform some, like, crazy musical feat, like, that can be memorable. Like, I mean, that could be something that, you know, gets stuck in your head. So, I mean.
Yeah. I could see that. Okay, so I tell you what, do me a favor, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Write this up in a good, like, cognitive way, so that I can sit down and look at it, and then
Will do.
I have kind of an idea, I think, for the flourishes that's formulating in my head too, and I'm gonna write that down, and then I'll get with you later, and we'll compare notes, and we'll see which one you like better.
All right. Or, you know, combine. If
Yeah,
we like certain elements, but not others.
I'm totally down with that. That's perfectly all right. But yeah, that way we kind of bounce those ideas off each other and come up with hopefully the best case scenario for the class.
And this was something that I wanted to write down and put a document before we had this, but again, crazy week this past week.
Perfectly all right. I've got some notes, so we're good. Anything else standing out for musician?
Let me look over the notes that I wrote down.
Because I know you said you weren't a big fan of your two subclasses that you had, the acapellist and the composer. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those anymore, but I don't have a replacement for subclasses in mind, especially with all of this that we've come up now. So I do want to go back to the drawing board with that. I do like an idea that Jacob had a while ago of making subclasses based on, like, you know, the four sort of main categories, like a woodwind subclass, a string subclass, a brass subclass, a percussion subclass, and a voice subclass. I guess 5.
Yeah, the 5 types of music.
Yeah, so
You've already got that idea kind of nascent in the spell list, where spells have compatible instrumentation.
Yeah, and
That's very similar to having, like, subclass specific, like, domains for clerics or what have you.
well, yeah, and I pulled those from esoteric traditions, bardic traditions, and going back to the supposed druidic forms, from what we can gather from them, obviously. But
yeah.
in accordance with those, all 5 of those instrumentations had an association with an element.
Ah.
So you had percussion was earth, woodwind was air, strings was water, and brass was fire, and then voice was spirit.
Oh, I love that.
So we could definitely play on those themes.
Oh man, these can make some great subclasses. Yes.
So let's go with that then. Let me see what you can. Let me see, because I can hear the gears turning.
Yeah.
Run with it, and let's talk about some ideas for it, because that's kind of what we did, thanks to Van Warren's ideas with the artist. We kind of broke it down. Rather than weird subclasses, it was just focuses on the different art stylings. You know, the tattooist, the calligrapher, the smith, that type of thing. And this is kind of in that same vein, I think. So I like it. Right. Run with it. Let's see what we can come up with.
Yeah. Other things. Let's see. Sort of like we have right now that learning songs are like sort of tied to, you know, sort of like, you know, song levels. Like, you know, you have 9th level songs, 8th level song, etc. I do think that it should look somewhat like the warlock and their mystic arcanums. like, because I think the musicians like number of songs should be like kind of reduced a bit, because like a musician learns like 2 songs every level like automatically, and it comes up to like 40. And as is written right now, like Saoirse can't even take third level songs until like level 10, so she has like nearly every first and second level song. And I think it would be a good idea to just go like a normal progression of learning like songs, like any caster in D&D learns spells. So it's just like, Saoirse would know like like level songs, like, someone of like a wizard of 9th level would know whatever level of spells you get at 9th level. But maybe like reduce the number of songs that a musician can know, and then like 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th make them like a warlock's mystic arcanum, where a musician learns like, 1 6th level song, 1 7th level song, 1 8th level song, 1 9th level songs. And this is just like sort of a really big, like, sort of, how do I put this, a really, really big performance for a musician, where they can only do it once before they finish a long rest. But, as a result, like, these are some of their most powerful songs that they can, whip out in the middle of battle. Because, like, I was thinking, if you can just play, any song on your list, a number of times, but, after, like, say, 8 plus your con mod, like, you get tired. Like, what if you could just play like your powerful 9th level songs like 8 times? That would be stupid. So I think it'd be a good idea to have the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th level songs be like mystic arcanums for the warlock.
Okay. Can you work out the chart for me?
Yes.
I'm not opposed to that. That's not a terrible idea, and we've discussed that as a problem. And honestly, I think my solution was just to create a billion more songs. So yours is actually a little easier to work with.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up, because like I was looking at your song list, and it's like, especially with trying to keep the effects weaker in accordance with Cairne being like, a little bit of a harder world, like bringing the advance back into D&D. There's only so much you can do with like, in terms of effects, with like those really lower level songs. So because of that, like, you get a lot of like song effects overlapping, like twists and turns, and not Red Ribbon, though it's also very similar, but there's like a first level song that is very, very similar to Twists and Turns, except I think it's like or it could be Twists and Turns and Red Ribbon. Anyways, there are first level songs that are very, very similar in effect. To the point where they're almost interchangeable. And like there are some first level songs that are just flat better than like some of the second level songs, like god, what is it? I think Built Upon Rubble, I think is the one is better than the one where, if you put like come together as a group to work toward like a single goal. I forget the name of the song, but like it gives everyone like a +1 bonus. Built Upon Rubble is like objectively and statistically better.
That's
so fair. Yeah, so just
in all things this.
Yeah. So I think instead of trying to write more songs, especially with the constraints you put upon yourself, I think it'd be easier to just like, pare down the number of songs, but also reduce the number of songs that a musician can know.
Okay.
In accordance with that.
Yeah. Give me your listing, your chart list that you have based on that. I don't.
Will do.
That's fine, and I think that'll make what you do have more meaningful.
Oh,
as well, which that's good.
I have a question.
Of course.
Should we be able to read what's on the stream?
on the. Oh, you're talking about the little.
Yeah, because it's like your outline is smaller, and then there's this great big thing with the Discord in it, and it's like,
Here,
um,
is that better?
uh, yeah, yeah. Now I can see.
There you go. Yeah, I had it zoomed in for a while there and zoomed it back out, swapping around.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so those are pretty good for musician, I think. Because I know my only subclass idea for musician was the Irenic Guisard, which I know you said you weren't really a big fan of.
Yeah, for several reasons, but yeah, we can maybe we can take ideas from that and put it into one of the other
Yeah.
musician subclasses, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be its own standalone thing, but even the acapellist and the composer, they're still good ideas.
Oh yeah, and like I'm still fond of them, but like I don't know. I think they could be a lot better, and I love the idea of having the musician subclasses being like your specialty group of instruments.
Yeah. No, I do like that idea. We'll definitely go with that and focus on that. Any other big changes for musician?
No, that
No?
I mentioned everything.
Good. Good. So yeah, we will definitely start implementing these. Those are good. Um, One thing I do want to go. Let's see. Yep, mentalist. I think mentalist definitely needs a little love too. Um, Genesis is definitely starting to come into her own. I will say. I think you're coming into stride with your abilities, but it's taken this long, and that's not your fault. It's the class. It's a weird class because I intentionally left it very very open to interpretation in hopes of bolstering a creative element to it, and I don't think I gave you enough tools to fully do that, which is
Yeah,
on
I mean,
me.
I wouldn't say that you didn't give me enough tools for it in the class itself. I would say that there's not really um a structural underpinning for some of the things that I would try to do. So I feel like I'm kind of coming up with things, and I do enjoy that aspect of it. But a lot of it is collaborative, and a lot of it isn't really outlined in the class. So if anything, if I was going to ask for anything, if we're going to take a deviation where, that maybe the benevolence does most of the healing for the offered classes within the set, maybe instead of healing, if if there were a subclass that had like the ability to not just understand people and what they're feeling, but understand their skill sets and match them with certain aspects of a collective task. Like the hive mind attempt. I would love for that to actually be a mechanic. I don't really need to have class features that make me shine. I want to help people. I want to help other people shine.
So one
You
of
know.
my subclass ideas for the mentalist was the psychogenic primer, which is literally a subclass that it's on the screen there. It has the focus
Yeah.
of bolstering abilities and then debuff. It's basically a buff debuff
Hmm.
type class. So you're bolstering your friends or hindering your opponents using your mental abilities.
Yeah.
Would it be something along that line?
Right. Yeah. That's what I would hope to see. I enjoy that part of it so much, just
Because
vibing with everyone.
we can develop that out. Because I've got I think just the three ideas that I've come up with for mentalist for subclasses. The ocularist, which is like a seer basically, like your perceptions are boosted. You have the ability to find things and be aware of things. The psychogenic primer, which is buff debuff, and the Purdue, which is basically like screwing with people's heads and doing damage.
Hmm.
Um,
Lovely.
well, I tried to give it some variety there.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it, if you think that's the one that you would be interested in, it doesn't have to be one of these three, especially if you have ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think the options that you have right now are really good. Obviously, I haven't gotten really to go to that level, with the abilities that I've play tested, but
Yeah. Well, you should have gotten a subclass at like level 3. So
oh,
this would have been with you for a while.
okay,
So that's one of the things I really want to get these out with in particular is you should have had a subclass, and for whatever reason, when I made these, I was like, subclasses? What's that?
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of abilities to be fair, but yeah, I think having that as an option would have been great because I know I tend to pick classes that let me be kind of a Swiss Army knife. I did that with Nil. I do that with Istu. I'm very predisposed to trying to be prepared for the situations that I'm thrown into or that are thrown at me or whatever. And I think part of that I could continue to, I guess, not really continue to do the same thing that I've always done, but that I can turn my focus away from my performance and what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right, and kind of be like, ladies and gentlemen, so and so, a little bit more.
So, in that case, focusing on the psychogenic primer, I'll develop this out into a functional subclass, and we can apply it to you.
Instant subclass.
Yeah,
Bam.
it doesn't have to be like the collective +1 when we're all working towards a goal or anything. It could be something as simple as just like applying different components of people's skill sets the way we tried to do with the hive mind thing. There's no mechanic for that in 5e or in AD&D that I know of really. I don't know if there's
Like a group mind functionality type thing.
right. Is that too much?
No. I mean, honestly, no.
Did you
You
ever
are
watch?
a powerful psychic. You know.
Did anybody ever watch Sense8
Yeah.
on Netflix?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like maybe that like
I
maybe
would
the mentalist is just kind of pulling from a party member's skill for just a moment or something.
I would look at like Leverage, the TV show, and like Nate and how he looks at everyone else's skill sets and is able to be like, okay, you do this part, you do this part, we're all gonna converge on this task, and everybody has their skill sets and they apply them in certain ways.
Well, have you
You know,
have you seen Sense8, Master Miss?
I've not. Sorry,
No, no,
it's
no.
like
It's
the
it's
only
it's
reference I
fine.
had.
The idea that he's mentioning, the concept is there are these 8 people from all parts of the world when they are each have various skills and strengths based upon how they were raised. It turns out they're all psychically linked, and as they discover how that works, they basically can say the tough German bruiser guy can jump into the Hindu scientist's body when she's in a pinch and beat the hell out of somebody using his skill set. They're basically able to kind of swap those strengths out as needed based upon whose need it is. Something like that would actually be kind of interesting, like the mentalist's ability to maybe have that kind of hive mind like you're talking about and be able to pull
Yeah.
skills from party members in a pinch.
There's
I
kind of a
support
little bit of
this.
a a little bit of a precedent for that in the final capstone ability for mentalists is they can absorb abilities for a certain number of days.
That's
Um,
permanent and devastating to the person you do it to, though.
yeah, but still, I mean, I have stuff like remote viewing. Most of my abilities are line of sight.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's. I don't know if the
Mentalist is
distance
a
of
trope.
sight is. Yeah.
Well, it's not always line of sight. Like if you're using clairaudience, for instance, that line of sight increases a great deal.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about clairvoyance though. If you're intentionally imposing blindness on yourself, does that mean you can only use clairvoyance for the duration, or
Well, you already blind yourself pretty often.
okay?
Like every
Should
time
I
you
be
put on the
like,
peace-bound mask, like you're blinded. Your senses are cut off when you put on the peace-bound mask or the peace-bound mask. What this does is it actually blinds your senses locally while you're viewing at a distance.
hmm,
It's a weird
yeah,
mechanic because it's not quite blind sight for you, because blind sight still has its penalties in D&D
mm,
that it would impose. You could put on that peace-bound mask, completely cover your ears, nose, mouth, and eyes, and be completely aware of everything that's going on around you, just as if you weren't wearing it, because your psychic senses are basically equal to a person who isn't wearing the mask. Is how I explain
mm,
it, right? You're just that
yeah,
aware psychically.
filtering out the noise. Yeah,
So yeah, that's basically what you're doing is you're cutting out all the extraneous noise that would normally distract you from being able to focus. Um,
nice.
I think we can play with this and get you something going. I mean, we can develop the other ideas as we go later on down the road. Right now, to get you something functional that we can start kind of playing and testing right away. I think that maybe the primer, does that sound like the best bet for you?
I think so.
Okay. In that case, I will put that on my docket to get that out hopefully before our next session. Is there anything about the mentalist that you feel should be moved, changed? Ideas, complaints?
I think it plays pretty well. I think my choice of race doesn't exactly go well with this. Um, I don't know that rustic hospitality is ever actually going to be useful out in the world.
Honestly, your background skills very seldom are in D&D.
Yeah.
Um,
Do use
Bryn's
that
made
lucky
it work.
feet though. Do use that lucky feet all the time,
well,
every
yeah.
day, all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Also, Bryn, like ever since I was able to make her background feature spirit medium, I'm just like, hey, does this knowledge have anything to do with the afterlife? Because, yeah, I can get advantage on that.
Oh, yeah. And that is actually one thing I've been meaning to do. I do want to come up with custom backgrounds for Cairne.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it was a large oversight on my part. We need custom backgrounds. I also kind of want to go through the feats list a little bit that is in existence. There are some things in that list I don't think work in Cairne.
No, like I know when Slotcher took Chef, and I remember you gimping Chef's effect to make it like more Cairn appropriate.
Yeah, there's yeah, because Cairn's not the Forgotten Realms, you
No.
know. So I think I should do that, but I mean that's not so pressing.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a time with this class that I didn't have some semblance of knowing where I wanted to go with it,
Yeah,
which speaks to how well it was written initially, even if it did lack a subclass. There's been a lot of times that I've looked at like stuff that comes ahead of abilities that I would get eventually, like for instance, levitation. Um, that kind of crosses paths a little bit with psychokinesis in a way. Like,
yeah.
is it really necessary for that to be the same, you know, ability? Or are they different abilities? Is it just a controlled speed for 14th level? You know, like
I'll have to look at them.
Yeah. I think it's all in all really well done, especially once we get like the subclass stuff in. I don't really have any notes on it. I've just kind of been playing within the field, within the paradigm that exists now. So
Oh, so that's the difference. So psychokinesis is your ability to lift other objects and manipulate them. Levitation is your ability to actually get yourself off the ground. You're
So I
levitating.
couldn't-
It's like limited hovering flight.
so I couldn't levitate an item and then stand on that item.
I mean, that's the gnome using a reduce spell and then lifting himself up with mage hand.
Yes, we are now playing Skyrim.
Yeah, I am within my weight limit. I mean, technically.
Yeah, so that's basically that's what it was meant as far as the difference is you're at 14th level the mentalist has a limited ability to actually get off the ground and hover around, which strategically and tactically is pretty huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. You could have used that like in the volcano.
Hmm.
Genesis could have just hovered right over the lava.
Yeah, just kind of float along.
But that kind of doesn't really go with my maybe not even a deviation, like a slight turn in philosophy. I want to lift other people up too.
Yeah.
That's something that I've learned a lot recently. Is this where we plug the other thing? Play to lift, huh?
Play to
Huh?
lift, yeah. Play to lift.
Yeah. So I wanna help other people too. And to me, I would rather have psychokinesis than have levitation.
Yeah, well,
Personally.
psychokinesis has had its uses.
Yeah.
No, so we'll work that out. And I think, like, even the title I made for the psychogemic primer is good. The altruistic manipulator.
Mm.
So I think
Yeah.
I think that'll work.
I've cut throats, but I mean well.
Yeah. It was in the defense of someone you care about.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So I'll definitely get on that. So just so we're not completely cutting out here, I do want to delve in before we go. I think we lost Chris. So
Yes, he dipped.
Spiritualist doesn't
Yeah,
have subclasses as well.
Let's talk about your ideas here. I would love to hear your ideas.
So I've got 3 that I've come up with. I love playing with the English language when I come up with names. You've probably noticed.
It's fun.
The entropic conduit, the living spirit box. Basically, you use the entropy of the dead as a weapon, channeling the entropy of the spirits around you as a means of attack.
Mm-hmm.
So this would actually come up with basically void attacks, and probably some empathic attacks.
Okay. Makes good sense. It's kind of channeling the traditional necromancer, ideal negative energy damage to things vibes.
Yes. But the way I pictured this is not you doing touch attacks or ranged attacks. You're actually basically like you see a spirit next to your enemy and you reach out and use that spirit to damage them. So that's the entropic conduit. You're actually a conduit to that spirit and using it as a weapon.
All right. Flavor-wise, I think it's pretty fun. The only thing I would ask you is, would you not sometimes wind up in the same situation that Jay has identified for the benevolent, where you can just put yourself in an environment where your bread and butter doesn't work?
Like a place with no spirits.
Yeah, or just you're trying to fight somebody, Like, how would you, the DM, if we were in a fight, I had picked the entropic conduit subclass, and I just ask, is there a spirit near this enemy? How many times per combat do you want to hear that question?
Is this where we say soul cage? Is this where we say it?
So we would need a mechanic.
You need a mechanic. I think that there's a couple base spiritual stabilities that would interact with it interestingly. Awareness is obviously baseline. You got to see where they are, but there's also the ability to simply converse with spirits, and you can just ask them, "Hey, can you stand over there?" Is kind of funny also.
Well, what about a mechanic that allows you to pull a spirit to you?
Yes, and now you've got something interesting because it's Cairn. We can assume ambiently there's spirits.
Yeah, just
Places.
about everywhere.
But now you're starting to think a bit more like mechanically. That sounds like a trapper.
Yeah.
That sounds like somebody who's really trying to work exclusively through AoE effects. Not even necessarily very large ones, just you do your setup and then you do your thing.
So it
I
could
kind
be
of like that.
an ability to trap, or to pull first. We'll say an ability to pull a spirit, and then while it's in the area, you can manipulate it. And then maybe a higher level ability that allows you to pull and keep a spirit, maybe even trap it, like you said, and then release it to effect if you are in a position where you need one.
Yes, you are the living Ghostbuster trap.
Yeah, I remember how odd that seemed when you would ask, like, "Are there any spirits around?" And then Church is like, "No," and we're like, eerie silence. Oh, this is weird.
Occasionally, we would move through areas that are simply not traveled and haven't been since the Calamity. That's acceptable. That's normal. But I do like that idea for the conduit. I don't know if that's right for listener, but I think as long as they have a mechanic to establish a spiritual presence, or like manipulate the ambient spirits just kind of being around doing their thing, then I think that it has mechanical sense at that point. I like it. But tell me about your mortificationist as well. I want to hear about everybody.
All right, the mortificationist, the nihilistic champion. So this, you actually would sacrifice bits of your own spiritual essence in order to control and manipulate spectral energy. This is the one that doesn't require a ghost to be around. You're actually pulling from your own spirit.
Okay.
To create effects.
How are you imagining that mechanically? Do you have a spell slot? Are you casting from HP?
I think this one,
today?
in my mind, you're actually crafting spiritual weapons and armor.
Oh, literally a champion. Okay.
Yeah. So this is more of almost like a martial class that uses your own spectral energy to fight, basically. So you could say create a spectral sword and shield.
Intrigue perks.
What's that?
Intrigue perks.
I do like the idea of casting from HP, though. It's interesting.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily how the spiritualist has to exist.
Casting from hit points? Did someone say blood hunter?
But okay. So my question, you have other instances of that in the Cairn source book. I think it would be let me check. Artist does that? Artists do that?
Well, they're using void energy.
Yes. Let's see. Artist, yeah. So just from a mechanical standpoint, how do you see it differing from what the artist does?
Well, the artist uses void energy, for one.
Yes.
So the effects are different. I haven't fully decided what I want spectral energy to do when it hits a living entity. But that aside, the artist, it cost him nothing to draw a weapon and pull it
Only
out.
his soul.
Yeah, but that's paid for already.
Yeah, you signed that off
Yeah,
immediately.
so
May as well make use of it.
he's free to use. This is costing you. Now I haven't really decided either if I want to use hit points.
Mhm.
Part of me wants to set up a separate scale that is your spirit. And
There's good reasons to do that, you know, like as listener, casting from HP is much freer for me than almost any other person in the party.
yeah. But see, I'm thinking, like, say you have a pool of spectral or spirit points or whatever we want to call it,
Mhm.
and you can use that pool. However, if the item is destroyed, if the item is lost, or, you know, et cetera, then that damage hangs.
Oh, now we're interesting. Now we're adding in something that is not. I don't think it's ever come up in any of our campaigns, but it is something I think of as being kind of a classic, like AD&D situation. Acid ate your sword. Do you have another?
Yeah.
Also, this sounds like some Puella Magi Madoka Magica shit. They literally, their souls are put into seeds, and that's what fuels their magical transformations. And like, the more they use, and like, if they get sad and shit, like, they literally just, like, you know, transform into monsters.
Yeah.
See, and here I'm thinking about the Sandman,
Hmm.
where he's bound his powers into the items.
Yeah.
So okay, I kind of that kind of interests me. Would it come back on like some really long time frame, like on Level Up or something?
It would come back over time. Yeah, it wouldn't be necessarily permanent because that really wouldn't be terribly fair. So there is a recovery ability. I was actually thinking about, to recover it, you have to absorb other spirits into you because you are still a spiritualist. So you could use those spiritualist abilities to replace it, but it wouldn't be such a benevolent.
No, that's pretty negative.
Yeah.
But that's okay. A class should be able to do evil things if they're an evil character.
Well, yeah, and
It's fine. Just turn a little bit of soul energy into a sword so that you can kill somebody and steal their soul energy to turn it into a sword.
well, you think about the spiritualist too.
Renewable.
The spiritualist is, for all intents and purposes, a necromancer.
Yeah, it's very true. So I am very interested in that. It's the subclass would have to come with proficiencies for your spiritualist weapons, if you will. But it's kind of interesting, the thought of I wield the ghost of a sword.
Yeah. Because I mean,
That's even funnier.
I would say, like, I think as a spiritualist you already have simple weapons, right?
Let me check that.
Let's see. Yeah, here it is. It's simple. But I think if we went with the mortificationist, the subclass would grant an expanded. I'd probably even be willing to go into like martial.
Yeah, you cut out just a little bit there at willing.
Oh, I said I'd be willing to like branch into a martial proficiency.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be much. It can be like even less than rogue would be fine. Maybe even monk would be an appropriate way to think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Actually.
you have a proficiency with a very limited but effective category of weapons.
And
You
like,
can't
your
do anything. You can't do whatever you want. But
soul
it
points
works.
does sound like key points. And the monks do, like, use the, I guess, energy within their body. So, yeah, like, actually.
So
Good point.
there's good precedent. I like the idea. It's very interesting in that spiritualist is kind of containing a lot of ideas across these subclasses, but there's a lot of classes that do that in 5e. That's pretty normal.
Yeah.
So, tell me about this last one. I like the look of it because I get to say the words Eidolonic Haruspex.
Eidolonic Haruspex. The Ghost Whisperer. So basically what you do already, using your spiritualist ability to pull information from the afterlife, from the spirits around you, this takes it that step further and allows you to begin to look forward and back in time and gain the benefits of that knowledge. Now, I say this, in my mind, the way that the spirits of the world work, right? Once they're dead and they can't move on. Time is no longer a linear thing for them. For them, time is a bundle of string that they're sitting in the middle of. So sometimes they're in the future, sometimes they're in the past, sometimes they're in the now. It's confusing. They're never really entirely sure which, right? You as the Haruspex manipulate that. You navigate the string and gain bonuses to initiative, bonuses to saving throws, and some limited precognition and retrocognition from it as well, based upon the spirits in the area. So you're still reliant on the spirits being in the area, but now you can pull twice as much data and get twice as many benefits from it.
I would like to point out, throw in some spiritual healing, and this would actually make a fantastic shaman-flavored subclass.
Yeah, could see that.
Interesting.
Because, like, from what I understand about shamans, it's like they literally, like, you know, will, obviously will go through their rituals to go, like, you know, into the spirit world, so to say, and converse with, like, you know, spirit guides, and, like, even do a bit of augury, like, sort of like, you know, this subclass here. But shamans can also, like, by reaching into the spirit world, like, you know, say that they can, like, pull spiritual impurities out of a person and, like, do a sort of, like, you know, spiritual healing, like IRL. So, like, tacking, like, some, you know, limited, obviously less than the benevolent because we don't want to step on their toes, but some limited form of spiritual healing into this subclass for, like, you know, that same sort of mechanism. You reach into the spirit world and, like, you know, heal them spiritually would be awesome flavor.
I could see that. Let me note that here.
Go ahead and make the note. I'll ask you a question while you're getting your note down.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have an idea of any combat abilities for the Haruspex? Because as it stands, the Spiritualist baseline, just default class features, still doesn't have any combat abilities all the way up to Summon Dead at, like...
Way high.
Way high. Summon Dead at 17. Summon
Well,
Dead at 17.
on the same, like, sort of, you know, logic as, like, the spiritual healing, like, maybe you could also do damage to a person's spirit in that, like, same or similar way.
It's not a terrible idea.
Maybe.
It's worth considering because you know, if you're doing this rework, we're adding the subclasses in. This is perfectly reasonable. Obviously, these will replace some of the existing level up class features. You know, I think what is subclass 3, 5, 7, etc., etc.
Oh, it depends per class.
Varies. But it'll replace a couple of them. That's fine.
There's always spirit guardians and spiritual weapon.
Yep. So the real trick is if you decide, or like if we get together and try and work out the better way, should the basic class features contain some sort of damaging ability, or should the damaging abilities each be in subclasses? Either way is fine, but that means that every subclass should probably have a damaging ability. Otherwise, it's just, you have to make a particular choice to have the same problem, but you still can have the same problem.
Yeah, I know
Everybody should be able to do some damage and defend themselves if necessary. Like, I think subclass should just be more like a specific application of how that damage works. Like additional flavor on top of that, or bonuses to it. Like new ways for it to work. Like,
but no, you're right, and I believe the spiritualist had nothing, if I remember, terribly effective.
No,
I found that very surprising. Like, I know I've only been here for like a week, but we got to like the one real combat that I've been here for, and we get to the fight, and there's like 7 tokens on the table, and we get through the first round, and like four people at the table we just say, okay, I don't have a combat so like option, and it's like, what?
It's not a combat heavy system.
No, I get that, but that's
well, and I will say, some of
that
that's
seems
intentional.
off.
Some of that's intentional, because well, as you saw, combat has repercussions, like very serious ones.
Yes, volcanoes go off, and
volcanoes
things.
do go off. And in previous combats, I have had listener do things. He hit somebody with a fish once. It was very impressive.
It was pretty impressive.
He spent a lot of time hauling people out of danger, or sneaking up, or the Ogham race honestly gives him more combat options than his class.
Yeah.
Because I can do touch attack, take over your senses. That's gotten us through a couple of things.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
that's
have
pretty
that
cool.
poison.
And I do have a on touch poison. It's very low damage, but this is Cairne. Very low damage can kill somebody still.
Yeah, because you get spectral awareness, spectral invocation, and speak with the dead by third.
Well, also there's the idea of the defensive. Okay, I don't want to say defensive, more of the scouting ability. Because remember we were in the tower and he was able to go upstairs and let us know. So I think in a way that is a tactical combat in manner. You know what I mean?
Oh well,
Yeah, and that's the
his usefulness is through the roof.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the spirit affinity. The spirit affinity is also very valuable as a defensive ability. It just makes it so the primary monster class of Cairne, the undead, does not target me.
Yeah.
And
as long
that's
as you don't
what's
mess with
made it viable, I think.
Well, that and your spectral invocation has been very useful.
It has. I haven't used it much in combat, even though, as you've mentioned in the past, it is usable in combat. In theory, I could attempt to channel, I could invoke the spirit of a fighter of some kind and let them and their class abilities do it. But the fact that it turns over control
Yeah.
and that it can go wrong, it's just so high risk. I've never tried to use this in a combat fashion.
Can be dangerous. Which is
Yeah,
something we
it's like
we could lessen the danger of, I suppose.
yeah, but the other trick is like I'm just making you play my character basically.
True.
Because the spirit is an NPC, as we've played it in the past. If I channel the NPC, I talk to them, but they're in charge of the body for a little while.
Which is something that
Just make you play my character through every combat. That's a lot of work.
I imagine the spectral invocation for the mortificationist or even the entropic conduit would be a whole different game, though.
That's an interesting way to think about it. Kind of like how, Jimmy is a rogue and he's got a sneak attack once per turn, but one of his subclass features uses that completely differently.
Hmm.
It's just an alternate way to burn something that you have available as a basic class feature.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, like you could use as the mortificationist, you could pull spectral invocation to return points.
yes.
Basically devour their spirit.
And what's funny is we're coming up on time, so I think I'll make a small call here, just like an idea.
Yeah.
I think listener would be an Eidolonic hair specs
Okay.
over the other two, which
Makes
is
sense.
very, very funny that I will continue to dig this hole that I am in. But, he was born a non-combatant. That's how he's probably going to keep on going.
Well, he did just pick up some new combat spells.
Yes, the Arcanist levels are going to really pull their weight in the future.
And that'll be curious. So yeah, if you have any ideas about the Haruspecs too, send them to me.
I will give it some consideration because I do enjoy the subclasses you've written here. I think each of them can be given a very interesting mechanical identity. And that's something that that's something that early D&D did really well. Classes had pretty distinct mechanical identities out of very limited components.
It's one of the things I loved about the old versions.
So carrying that spirit forward is very good. So I've got the 3 here. I've got your bullets on them. Let me sit and think about them a while. When we get together for our next session, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and that'll work. That'll work because that's kind of what I want to do. And I know we've tried out one of the artist ones already with Chris. He did the calligrapher, and now we have the smithy going, which so far isn't bad. And just to blow through these other things, I know we haven't really covered too much with the fighter. The only thing I've come up with for the fighter was the hummingbirds, which is basically people who use the mutated plants of Cairne to create drugs and powders and smokes that boost their abilities.
Yeah, I was wondering how that would work because we already talked earlier about there not being a lot of plants, so you can't really wildcraft. What you're saying is that you could actually find that the mutated plants have some psychotropic or whatever type. Are
They
you
do.
thinking like, yeah, okay, that would enhance.
Yeah, but it's a
Also-
specified. It's like I'm kind of basing it loosely. It says there on the historical Hissassin roots, where they basically smoked hashish to go out and fight and murder and kill and do whatever, because they believed it enhanced their abilities. So this would be like a sect of warriors, and there's almost like there would almost be like a practical ritual type to it. They would have certain sets of drugs that they keep prepared and keep in stash, usually as much as they can.
I have a question about that, just about the collection of herbs and stuff.
Yeah, what's that?
I know when we went, underwater and did all that diving and stuff, we came across like a dome where there was this tree in it, right? That ended up like attacking people and stuff.
The bubble. Yeah.
Right. So that was there obviously to keep the tree alive, but I wonder if there aren't other sort of quasi hermetically sealed environments in which stuff like this can flourish, where it's not really as impeded by the presence of the blight as most things on surface level would be.
Very
And maybe
possible.
that could be a justification for the existence of stuff where you would think that these delicate ecosystems would be broken down by that.
Well, keep in mind, And I halfway regret it now because we just kind of blew through it without actually, I moved time when you guys traveled through the commonage.
Mhm.
And the commonage is like the last green space in Cairn. There is actual like agriculture, farming, some trees, some very big trees remaining in the commonage. It's the only place, and it's why the commonage is such an important place in Cairn. Why the people that live there, the Ungamute,
Yeah.
are a faction because that's their land and they're
That,
the
that
ones
is
that
what
work
they
it.
do. Side note: if we roll another Cairn campaign at some point in the distant future, I am playing an Ongamute cowboy. Mark on up. I'm telling you.
Nice, nice. I love it. I love
I
it.
do. I will say I do feel. I kind of feel like playing through this character that I've had for a bit for a fighter. I kind of have a few ideas for subclasses, but
I want to
that
see him.
going around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
let him out.
of note on the fighter, we may want to like nerf a few of the fighter, like the base fighter subclass features, because whenever we listen, whenever we still had Uki and Kaz like together in the campaign, like obviously both were a huge asset and like both were like could really pump out some damage numbers, but just by watching the two and just like going off of feeling alone, like I can tell that the base fighter was made for like basic like base 5th edition D&D, and that the Desolation Strider was made for Cairn in terms of like just what sort of damage numbers they were putting out. Like it was no
I will
comparison.
say I agree with you entirely. I know the Desolation Strider is broken a bit. It needs to be dialed back on some things because some of the defensive and damaging abilities are just way overpowered.
Honestly, like I thought they were like a lot of them were Karen appropriate. Like compared to like comparing Uki and Kaz, like I thought Uki was way more powerful than Kaz.
Well, in some places, like I don't want to nerf them entirely. I don't mean entirely.
Right.
But if you look at, for instance, the Dread Charge,
Damn, that thing was so good.
yeah, like it's ridiculous. But it's ridiculous to the point where it's kind of OP.
Yeah. Part of that may have had to do with just how good of a mount he had.
Yeah, he did end up the well. I mean, that's kind of part of it. He never even. I don't even think he ever got his companion. Because the Desolation Strider gets a companion.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Dread Mount's a part of it. Like, the 4th level, you get a Dread Mount.
So what I liked in regards to being able to play, I definitely feel like I don't feel like I have to be the person who's packing the most amount of punch at the same time because I'm not not a tank, but then at the same time, it is that if I'm the only fighter and we wind up in the situation, it's just like, oh, what's gonna happen if I'm already down quite a bit for hit points. I think having Kaz, I really felt like playing with him that the strategy that reminded me quite a bit of was in Zweihander, Grim and Perilous, and that is you've got these professions that include man at arms, shield wall, militiaman, and just literally like the shield wall is that you're the man at arms. So sorry, so the profession is your man at arms, but then one of the things that you have is shield wall, so you can form a protection, like a protective wall of defense, safeguarding. So it's the idea of that you can be there and you can hold to then parry on behalf of someone else, right? So I kind of felt like
D&D
that.
has that.
Yeah. And so what do they call it? What do they call it in D&D? Is it the same thing?
Well, I think that there's a feat, and I think that maybe the Battle Master might get that as well.
Okay.
Battle Master has one, Paladin has one, and there is a feat. I think it's the defender feat.
Yeah, I think Rune Knight gets one too.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I think I can parry off somebody else's or something if they're within 5 feet of me.
One thing I,
subclasses for fighter that are in 5e. Okay.
I one thing I definitely want to get rid of with fighter is that self heal.
Second wind. Second wind is so good.
It is, but for Cairne, like it just doesn't make any sense.
No, second wind is really, really good healing in vanilla 5e. It's absurd for Cairne.
But I haven't.
Can,
But I would.
can I at least heal to full before we?
I would like to disagree, though. I mean, second wind does not get you that much HP, and I didn't get us to take a second wind in the last several sessions because we were going and going and going.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's okay to keep it though because I need to be in the front. I'm gonna absorb more hits statistically than somebody else.
So,
in the back
Yes,
line.
here's my problem with second wind. Explain it to me in a realistic light how that works.
Oh lordy!
I didn't hear no bell. Let's go.
Yeah, I was. That's. I gotta say, man, being in situations where I've not gotten just a second win, I've gotten 22nd win, and the idea of that just
Well, I
you
mean,
get to a point where you're fueled by adrenaline to such a state that it's like okay, that you are able to literally pull it out if you're more attuned to that, to the capability.
I could see it adding
every Rocky movie.
I could see it adding a
Yes.
few temp hit points. I could see it boosting strength or even maybe granting an extra attack, but you already have that ability. But healing.
Healing 1d10 plus fighter level.
1d10 plus level.
Keeping in mind, Wilhelm, how much does Wilhelm heal with actual medical aid?
That's part of it. Like 1d4 plus 2 if I pull out the acupuncture.
Yeah, that's your
Increases.
healer out of combat, giving you his full attention.
Yeah.
That's my
and
problem with it.
And I healed for a D6 plus my intelligence modifier, which is outclassing him, which shouldn't be.
Which but we're gonna fix that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a fighter being able to basically steal the Benevolence Thunder is a little. Because, I mean, it's meant to be a rough world. That's why you only heal 1 hit point when you rest.
Yeah, healing in Cairne is supposed to be
A
rare.
night's sleep gets you 1 hit point.
Yeah,
Wait,
healing in Cairne is supposed to be rare, and then combat is supposed to be like something that like a real risk you take. Like you seriously have to think about if you're going into combat. So
You mean I'm 3 months away from healthy?
If you're
Pretty
just
much.
resting, yeah.
Oh fuck.
I've got
that's-
a couple of things that can help with that, but legitimately, yeah, that's kind of why.
But
And that's if we have herbs, which
like I said, though, in the very beginning, that combat is very serious with very real repercussions, and healing takes a long time because clerical magic doesn't exist. But at the same time, Galdawina aside, your opponents know that too. And as you guys discovered, unless they are outmatched and outclassed, people aren't in a hurry to pick a fight with you. And they have talked their way out of a lot of fights intentionally. So it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, the second wind I'm not a big fan of. I might be willing to change it into like a temp hit point situation and a much lower amount because I could go with the bolstering of adrenaline and just beefs you up for a temporary amount of time.
Yeah.
But you're going to crash off that eventually.
Yeah, exactly. One devil's advocate observation though is that I find it of more value. I'd say it's definitely something that's of more value in Cairne because we play with large parties and so that we're playing with a large party, you have a lot more people. That it's one of those being able to have this opportunity to self heal is then heal. It's like healing that I'm not taking away from somebody else, right? So if you have too few, if you don't have a lot of healers, you have a large party and a lot of injuries. So then the ability to have at least, and as I said, I don't think it's heal. I like what you say about temporary hit points because it should be something that you can do in the moment in the melee. But then when you're done, you're exhausted.
Yeah,
But
it
like you
functioned
said,
more
the way
like the
we've been playing,
barbarian.
we don't take. I mean, we haven't taken any short or long rests in several, I think in several days,
Yeah.
in this campaign.
And that's part of just where you're at too, to be fair.
Yeah,
Like this was meant to be a test of survival and resource management.
yeah, and resource depletion, which is right, is what you said, because that's something that you definitely stressed at the beginning of this was resource depletion when it came to
Yeah.
you're probably gonna run out of food. You got
And
to go find food. It's all tainted. What are you
well,
gonna do next?
well that's one of the things that standard D&D fails miserably at is survival. You never have a problem surviving in D&D. I could throw a standard D&D party in the middle of an Arctic wasteland and they'd be just fine. They wouldn't have to worry about food or water or exposure because
Check
they
out
have
these good berries.
yeah, they have cantrips that they can cast at will a billion times a day that feed them, give them water, make them warm, clothe them, clean them, you know. And Cairn is supposed to be a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Resource management, finding food, scavenging is part of it for that reason. It's part of the challenge. It's supposed to be anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so, and that's why healing is supposed to be such a challenge as well, because especially when you get into high level in standard D&D, getting whacked with a great sword, you just don't care. Who cares? Oh, I took 30 points of damage. That's all right. I got a cleric. It'll be gone in a
I'm
minute.
fine.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that you would see Genesis trying to pitch in to help with the healing because of that ability. Like I kind of felt bad for not doing it at that level.
Well, when you worked together, I think if we bolster the benevolent, like we've talked about, and keeping in mind the limitations of the mentalist and whatnot, and like we've used it, and the best use I've seen of that ability is when you worked in tandem with Wilhelm to save Listener when his legs got cut off.
Mm.
Don't forget about Uki after her, suit leaked.
That was a big deal too.
Yeah.
That was very serious.
Like I felt we were capable then, with those combined abilities.
Well, and that's and this is me going back to the old editions of D&D. In old D&D, no one was an island. You had to have a party. You had to have a rogue. You had to have a cleric. You had to have a mage. You had to have a fighter, or you just weren't going to make it. Everybody had their role to play, and it was a defined role. You could be creative with it, and you could come up with all kinds of really interesting ways to deal with it, and even get outside of it if needed. But at the end of the day, these defined roles are what kept the party afloat.
Because I will say that was, as I mentioned, here's 3 pivotal moments, and I almost feel like Uki went through the same sort of experience that Genesis had in regards in the Orti, in that it was just really just kind of mind altering for Uki to realize I am not invincible, and I'll be damned if it's like if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die in combat. It's going to be defending somebody, and to die from this is not the way that I'm supposed to die. This is not the way that Hypersitting is supposed to die. And so
Yeah.
it's almost the same realization. I think that, as I said, the other moment of Genesis almost harming, Cersei, and so that was kind of interesting to take something that it was the holy crap, am I gonna die in this moment? Out of thinking as like, is my player gonna die? but then being able to take it and go, wow, this is not the way I expected to go out.
It is
Yeah, I don't-
amazing how much damage and how many people have been lost to water.
I don't think my character was ever really worried about dying. I don't really.
Oh, not dying.
A temperamental thing.
About
I
harming
wasn't
us.
until I learned about 1 HP of healing per day. That changes everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait, who said they weren't right? So Genesis, you know what I'm talking about, right? When you almost stabbed Ursa with the knife.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that in very vivid detail, but I don't think that was what my concern was. I wasn't concerned about myself, really.
Oh right,
My own,
yeah.
like,
No, exactly. But that's not. No, I wasn't saying I wasn't correlating it to your concern for yourself. It was this kind of revelation that, oh my gosh, something may happen that is totally against what what your values are and what your mission were. You know, that you're about to harm the one person that you're most protecting, right? That kind
I
of
mean, I know it was against my values, obviously,
Yeah.
but that was more profound than something just going against what I would. This is not who I am, you know. I mean, I know that on that level, but that was more of a. I mean, I know that sword had that effect on me, but that was just a result of my own choices, allowing someone to get hurt, you know. And there were things within my backstory that kind of flashed in front of my eyes on that level. So it wasn't really a violation of who I am as a person as such, if you think about backstory and context without spoiling it too much. You know, I find that to be more of a return to what Genesis used to be than anything that's ever happened in this storyline.
I loved the Revenant Misericord.
And that
There's
you
a
were the
reason.
only person.
There's a reason why we had to get rid of it.
Nobody asked questions about why Genesis can just slit a throat and be fine. Like, nobody ever asked why she's a cold-blooded murderer. Like, y'all just are cool with it. Like, you think that was a deviation from bro?
From everybody,
So
I'm
now-
pretty sure.
Oh, it's the stinger at the end of the movie.
I would love if there was a way to turn Genesis into an armor Marv just by like killing her off and just throwing her into the gutter and then to bring her back as like this desolation destroyer just like you guys really did not know me at all.
Wow.
Um,
Man, kudos to you. Man. Oh, goodness gracious. Holy crap. Well, I'm amazed y'all let Uki keep pitch that you didn't make after what happened with that you didn't make me pitch into the pitch of darkness, the water.
well, we're about to go back on the water.
Back to sea.
Back to sea. We'll see what happens with it. There's a few courses of action that this could follow from here, dependent on you guys, obviously. We all know your destination. You know, the domes of the Shining Eyes. There's more than one way to get to them. I've been plotting and planning all that out like mad for a while now, because there's a lot there. But you guys will be on the water for a little while, and I do have some interesting challenges ahead for you while you're on the water. Or in the water, depending. You know how the ORT is. But it should be interesting.
Uki's just like, great. So typically frying fires like, no, from fire into boiling pot of water. That's toxic.
But
So it's like so out of our element of the mountains and open mountains and cooler temperatures and oh my gosh, it's like I'm freaking in Texas right. She's in Texas with me right now.
We have
But
come
then
a long way,
obviously-
though. We have come a long way since, and it's almost funny to say it this way, but since you guys met in a tavern.
It did happen. It did happen. Many grand adventures have
Yeah.
started exactly this way.
That's the classic. You meet in a tavern. It just
And you faked us out with it because we didn't start in the tavern.
it seemed appropriate.
Man, you want to talk about character development? I think about where I was in my life when we started working on this and where I am now. It's like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a long, strange
The
trip.
times have changed, most definitely.
Mhm.
But
Well, I look forward to seeing what's next.
I look forward to presenting it, and I appreciate you guys having this sit down with me. I'm not going to hold you any longer. I know it's past time, and you guys are probably tired. Do please send me your ideas, like we've talked about. I'll work on the ones that I have. We'll knock heads and combine. And if you guys think of anything else on the wayside, let me know. And you guys know me. I'm pretty easy to work with. I want to see your ideas, and
I have opened up my document already.
good. And criticism as well. As you guys know, like I'm not gonna get hurt if you if you say it. Hey, this sucks. But yeah, send me your ideas, and when we come back to Cairn, 2 weeks.
Mhm.
With
Well, I just want to remind you guys that I am actually going to be gone the next 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
That's right. You got a trip, don't you?
Yes, we are finally taking the long-awaited honeymoon.
Oh well.
Congratulations.
Hey.
Well, just take a
Yeah.
break from your honeymoon and pull Roll20 up on your phone. We'll be fine.
Do not do this.
Don't,
Do
Do not do this.
don't listen to me.
Get away with this, but she's in the group with us.
Oh my god.
Now, you enjoy your honeymoon. Well, would you want us? Should we wait and hold off and give us an extra time to finish development on these new ideas and give you a chance to get back?
We'll leave that to you all because it would be 2 weeks because we are going to be leaving next Saturday and won't be back till probably the following Sunday.
Okay. Well, I will leave it in you guys' hands. Just let me know through Discord. We can do whatever. It's all good.
We'll
I
have
would-
time to think.
I would love to have us just have like an in character version of this. You know, we really don't get a lot of time to, consider things. I know we're kind of under a time crunch. Things are getting worse and worse by the day, but like our characters don't really get a chance to sit down and like discuss things with each other. And I feel like that would be a safer option without our healer.
Yeah.
Not that that's all you are, but like,
I am. You guys are on the water. You're gonna be on the water for a while. I'm not gonna throw hell at you right off the bat. If you guys want to take a session while Wilhelm is off on his honeymoon, and have basically like a night at the Wickletongue, except Cairn version.
hive mind.
We could do improv scenes. I love doing improv scenes.
The
Hive
Orty,
mind.
the Orty is home. The Orty has been home for a while, and it is your home base, basically. So, yeah.
I will be enjoying a tasting at a meadery, so it does seem fitting if we are all sitting down to drink, even with me not there.
Perfect.
Nice.
Which meadery?
Give me 1 second. Let me look it up. My wife found a Groupon for it's in Cleveland.
Oh, in Cleveland. Okay.
Yeah, she found it. We're doing the Haunted House Cafe for lunch, followed by Western Reserve Meadery.
Cool.
Shoot, send me a ticket. I want to go.
What the Western Reserve? You said.
Western Reserve, yeah.
Mead is blowing up.
Is big.
Yeah. I drank some
That's-
Stram's blackberry mead earlier since someone else also pulled the bottle out. It's like, do that.
I had my Camelot mead for tonight's roundtable.
Love it.
I will
Bunratty.
acquire a bottle for our coming sessions to drink in honor.
Bunratty mead so far is the best I've had.
I can't wait for us to have a game in person so I can drag my millions of dice and show you. Like, I have a problem. Look.
Well, when Wilhelm gets back, if you guys want to take some time outside a session and talk about actually planning maybe a meetup at a con or something, we can maybe talk about it.
Dreams of the future.
Yeah, that's I've actually that's something I put on my bucket list at the very beginning of 2 years ago when I first started playing doing all this RPG online. I put on my bucket list that I wanted to be able to meet a lot of people in these communities in person at a con. So just
Yeah.
let me know where everybody wants to converge.
When we were talking about going to Georgia that time, I booked the hotel and bought the tickets and everything.
Oh, well, if we do it this time, we're gonna all do it.
Let's go.
I will say,
Yeah.
Are you,
on a closing note, because before we end up here at too
yeah.
late,
Nice.
Snacks and I are returning to Brindlewood Bay
yes.
with Featherfall. I don't know. I hope you guys didn't miss that because it was hilarious.
This
Oh
is
my
the second time I filled out the application.
Oh, I really enjoyed the setting and my character. It's a lot of fun, but maybe one of these days I'll grab a copy and we'll do a one-off ourselves. But anyway, don't miss it.
Church was you've got to meet Church's character. Oh my god,
Violet.
it's hysterical. It is just man. You think this? Well, y'all have known him longer than I have, but it's just kind of mesmerizing to sit there and just listen to him roleplay his character. So damn funny.
Violet's
damn.
fun.
Yeah, like Felix. Felix was a good egg.
Oh yeah, I love my characters. I do, and Violet finding love in the middle of the climax of their story. I could just picture the Dreamweaver start playing in slow motion as her Vespa ramps over the.
I was definitely hearing that in my head.
Oh yeah. The old Rose in the wagon tried not to spill her drink in the back of the Vespa.
If
Yeah.
I do have a Halloween one shot I've done that I've made, we could run,
Sweet.
and you guys could play characters again.
Let's plan it.
Oh,
Let's plan it.
Yeah.
But for now, let's let you guys go to sleep, get some rest.
sleep time has arrived.
We will see you
Yes.
guys in 1 week for Sigil. Always looking forward to it. And until then, thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back soon.
Franco.
Good night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night, all.